Chapter 265. Lin Feng chuckled. Are you sure he's in a good mood and not flirting with the aunties? How on earth did he compliment an auntie for looking like she was 18? Yunhu tilted his head and studied him for a long time. Lin Feng took a sip of coffee, furious. That auntie is going to invest in him. But I don't even have a girlfriend. Yunhu fiddled with the boarding pass. This has nothing to do with words, it has to do with looks. Forget about your face. While the team members were still exchanging thoughts, Qin Mo pulled the bewitching youngster back to the team. Familiarize yourself with the hotel address for the last time. Feng Yi will stay in China to deal with the aftermath. Secretary Liang will take over his work. For the next 3 days, you can look for him if you encounter any problems. Coco and Fatty had already boarded the plane. Now, check your watch and pass. Qin Mo came from the military compound and had always done things in a military style. Once he spoke, everyone obeyed without any noise. After everything was arranged, the Supreme Alliance officially boarded the plane. 3 days of training and 1 East China international friendly match. The most important was the latter. In Feng Yi's words, the opponent was very strong. During last year's training, they had completely suppressed Supreme Alliance. Moreover, they had recruited a new player king this year and had a high number of first kills on the Tokyo national server. If the current Supreme Alliance couldn't even beat the opponent, they wouldn't be qualified to participate in the National League. In other words, this was a competition to test their qualifications. If they won, Supreme Alliance would receive countless cheers. If they lost again, even if Almighty Qin was there, it would definitely damage their reputation. Most importantly, only people who were familiar with League of Legends knew that if they wanted to be recognized by more people, especially those around them, they had to prove that they weren't playing games as people said, eating and waiting for death, achieving nothing. Translator's thoughts. Uni editor. Most importantly, only people who were familiar with League of Legends knew that if they wanted to be recognized by more people, especially those around them, they had to prove that they weren't playing games for nothing. This was Shui Yaoyao's first time taking a plane. From the moment they took off, she couldn't calm down. She could see the endless clouds from the window seat. She didn't tell anyone that this trip to Tokyo caused many people to criticize her. She lived in a courtyard house and there would always be people visiting. The benefits of playing a game are so good. It must be a lie. Forget it. Just let her dream. She just doesn't like the job I introduced to her. She thinks we are harming her. This child is so immature. She doesn't even look at her own condition. I won't persuade her anymore. Do what you want. She will regret it in the future. Shui Yaoyao knew that a selection contest couldn't change ordinary people's views. If a real normal person knew that you were playing in a professional team, the first thing they would say to you would be, if you're so good, why aren't you on TV? At times like this, she would always be speechless. Shui Yaoyao knew that if she wanted to prove herself, she had to participate in the National League. Because only by standing on the national stage would those people shut up. In fact, even Fujio was the same. Most people in the school would not care about a small selection contest. National competition, Shui Yaoyao wasn't the only one who wanted to go. Yin Wuyao, Feng Sheng, Lin Feng, Yunhu, and all the other team members treated that place as their dream. He wanted to prove that he was not old. He wanted to prove that he could play the game well even if he stuttered. Chapter 266. Jiang City was the capital of China, so it wasn't far from Tokyo. Even though it was an international flight, it only took 4 hours to reach Tokyo. But in just a short 4 hours, the sleepy Fujio put on the eye mask provided by the airline after she got on the plane. She adjusted her seat and tilted her head. Her silver hair fell on the eye mask, and the contrast between the black and white areas was beautiful. Qin Mo arranged the youngster beside him to prevent him from flirting with others. But after seeing Fujio being so obedient, he inexplicably softened his face. When the air stewardess walked over, he put down the magazine and said, please bring me a blanket. The air stewardess looked at Chin Mo and blushed. Even though she had seen many handsome guys, it was rare to see one with such a deep and magnetic voice. But obviously, Chin Mo's attention wasn't on the air stewardess at all. No matter how sweet her smile was, he only took the blanket and looked at the youngster's sleeping face. When he turned to the side, he was even closer to the youngster. Chin Mo only paused for a moment and pulled his hand back. But this time, he wasn't reading the business magazine because the youngster tilted his head and put it on his shoulder. Chin Mo frowned and didn't push him away. It was probably because there was a person sleeping next to him. Chin Mo was affected as well. 10 minutes later, he fell into a light sleep as well. Lin Feng didn't turn his head. He wanted to give Little Spade a beef burger, but he saw such an intimate scene. He opened his mouth wide and was stunned for a while. Then, he turned back and asked Yunhu, "Do you think Captain would give himself to Little Spade in order to win the National League?" "You can ask Captain yourself." Yunhu threw this sentence at him and put on the eye mask, ready to sleep. Lin Feng muttered, "How would I have the guts to ask him myself? I'm not stupid." But it seems that Captain treats Little Spade exceptionally well. Captain took him as his little brother. Now that things have come to this, this is the only explanation I can give. Lin Feng quickly accepted it. "I see. Then it makes sense." Secretary Liang sat beside him and raised his head to look at the cabin. What kind of communication was that? How could they be brothers? However, he would rather be thinking too much. After all, Boss Chin grew up alone. It wasn't strange for him to protect someone he liked and was younger than him. But when he thought of the conversation on Weibo today, Secretary Liang wasn't sure again. Madam and the rest had not returned to China yet, but once they did, they would definitely ask about this matter. Right now, he could only hope that the situation would change when he arrived in Tokyo. After all, he would be able to bump into Miss Lioli's team this time. When Fujio woke up, she took off her blindfold and felt the glare of the sun, which meant that the plane was descending. Chin Mo woke up earlier than him. When he saw the youngster open his eyes, he pointed at his shoulder and smiled coldly. "It's all your saliva. What do you think I should do?" "I'll give you my uniform." Fujio smiled at Chin Mo, sat up straight, and pretended to take off her coat. "As long as Brother Mo doesn't mind my dirty clothes." Chin Mo lifted his thin lips. "Don't use this method. When we reach the hotel, wash the clothes." Fujio. Chapter 267. The Supreme Alliance's hotel was in the center of Tokyo, which was known as the city with the most advanced electronic technology in the world. Here, they didn't discriminate against esports games or voice actors. They chose this place to train so that the team members could better integrate into the environment. The streets were very clean, and the people walking back and forth were all speaking Japanese, which made people feel like they were in a manga world. But when they arrived at the hotel lobby, there was a very awkward problem. No matter how rich the Supreme Alliance was, they only booked a double standard room for 2 people. It was impossible for each person to stay in one room. After hearing this news, Fujio raised her eyebrows and squinted her beautiful eyes, but her expression didn't change. After the incident at the convenience store, she already knew how good this god was at analyzing people, so she didn't stand up to speak immediately. But when Shui Yaoyao looked up, her heart skipped a beat. 2 people sleeping in one room for 3 days. What about His Highness Zhou? No matter who she slept with, it wouldn't be very convenient, right? What if her secret was found out? Thinking of this, Shui Yaoyao looked in Fujio's direction. Fujio was also looking at her. Her fingers moved a little, but it was very small. Shui Yaoyao was a smart girl. She turned her eyes and said to Secretary Liang, "I'm timid, and I don't dare to sleep alone. Can you arrange for me to sleep with His Highness Zhou? We are familiar with each other, and I trust His Highness Zhou." This sudden suggestion made all the team members put down their luggage and look at her in astonishment. Sister Yao Yao wanted to share a room with little Spade. Man and woman in the same room. So open. Even Qin Mo's left hand, which was holding the room card, paused for a second. When he raised his eyebrows, he was already a little cold. Feng Shang stuttered even harder. What did you say? You let my idol sleep with you? Lin Feng also had a naughty smile on his face. Sister Yao, you can do it. You can do whatever you want with little Spade. You can even kiss him. Shui Yao Yao's cute apple face turned red, but she didn't back down on this issue. She just didn't know what to say. Fu Jiu walked over with one hand in her pocket and the other on Shui Yao Yao's shoulder. She smiled and said, "Don't talk nonsense. Sister Yao needs to find a boyfriend in the future, but she's really afraid of the dark. Even if she's afraid of the dark, a girl's reputation will be affected if a man and a woman live together." Qin Mo walked over and interrupted the youngster with a cold voice. Fu Jiu smiled. I agree with this, so please take care of little sister Yao and find a beautiful woman to sleep with her. As for me, I'll share a room with my baby Feng. Fu Jiu turned her head and winked at Feng Shang with her left eye. Feng Shang was overjoyed. Just as he was about to speak, the room is ready. You and I will share a room. Qin Mo's presence at this moment gave people an indescribable sense of oppression. It was obvious that he was talking to Fu Jiu. Feng Shang panicked. I'll trade with Almighty Qin. Qin Mo laughed softly, turning back to look at Feng Shang. His deep gaze was especially gentle, but his words were cold. Second young master, I can guide your idol in gaming, can you? Chapter 268. I. With his skill level, he really couldn't guide his idol in gaming. Feng Shang stuttered and couldn't retort at all. From his perspective, he felt that Almighty Qin was being a bit shameless, using this kind of thing to pressure him. How could an Almighty compete with a newbie like him? But it was obvious that Qin Mo was embarrassed. The National League is around the corner. Your idol is the rookie king of the Qin group. If he doesn't show some results, he will embarrass the Supreme Alliance. Fu Jiu heard this and expressed that she was the main character. I can practice in my room. It's just leveling up, no problem. Are you sure you're leveling up and not flirting? Qin Mo lifted the corners of his lips, his voice faint. I've already destroyed your credibility. Don't talk so much nonsense, take your luggage and follow me upstairs. Fu Jiu roughly knew that once the Almighty had decided on something, no one else could change his mind. And it was true that before they came, the Almighty did say that he wanted to give her a private room, but he never said that they were going to sleep in the same room. If she slept in the same room with anyone, she was confident that she could completely hide it from the other party. But to sleep in the same room with a god, as someone who studied criminal psychology, she wasn't sure what kind of tricks the god would suddenly throw at her. What? Unwilling. Qin Mo stopped in his tracks. With his luggage in his hands, he turned back and looked at her with a faint smile. There was no warmth in his eyes. Fu Jiu insisted, I'll share a room with Feng Shang. I'll ask Brother Mo for guidance later. Qin Mo took a deep look at Fu Jiu, and his voice turned cold. Up to you. Then, he turned around in an extremely cold manner. Although Fu Jiu knew that her two rejections were hurtful, living with the Almighty was indeed dangerous. The members of Supreme Alliance stood there, not daring to speak. After all, the chill emanating from their captain was too obvious. It was so obvious that even someone as slow as Lin Feng could feel the chill on his neck. After Qin Mo left, Lin Feng opened his mouth and patted Fu Jiu's shoulder. Little Spade, Big Brother admires you. You have to know that no one has ever rejected Captain. You are the first. It's all because Feng Shang wants to sleep with me. Fu Jiu smiled as she glanced in the direction where Qin Mo had disappeared. I'm afraid that if I don't hold on, he will cry. Student Feng. He really isn't that weak. But to be able to sleep with my idol is really too happy. The pajamas he was wearing today were also very handsome. Wearing it, he could lie together with his idol and climb the ladder in his pajamas. He could also give his snacks to his idol. And the gold coins in the game. Student Feng was especially excited. Shui Yaoyao looked at Fu Jiu worriedly. Fu Jiu gave her a reassuring look. Baby Feng was too careless to notice anything. Feng Shang really didn't notice anything. He only felt that being able to be so close to his idol in this life was like a pie falling from the sky. Secretary Liang followed Qin Mo into the elevator, so he was the one who felt the coldness the most. Looking at Boss Qin's handsome face, which had obviously turned cold, he really didn't dare to say a word. Qin Mo looked at the number on the elevator indifferently, as though nothing had happened. Chapter 269. He probably didn't expect to be rejected. So once something like this happened, it always made people uncomfortable. Qin Mo narrowed his eyes dangerously. It was very uncomfortable. Secretary Liang was very nervous and didn't dare to say anything. After getting out of the elevator, his phone rang and saved his life. Looking at the tall and noble figure in front of him, Secretary Liang heaved a sigh of relief. He adjusted his breath and said very gently, "Miss Lioli, yes, we are here. Yes, we are still in the hotel. There is no need for lunch. Boss Qin seems a little tired. They're all here for training. Sure, I'll bring them over in the afternoon." After Secretary Liang finished speaking, he met Qin Mo's cold eyes. He hurriedly explained, "Vice President Feng has already arranged the schedule beforehand. The two teams will train together." Qin Mo entered the room and tugged at the collar of his jacket. His voice was cold. That was in the past. Now that the team has a new member, we'll change it tomorrow. Yes. Secretary Liang also knew that their CEO didn't like to interact with girls, but if he didn't interact with them, he would turn gay. On the other side, Baby Feng was still excited. He looked at Fu Jiu with a red face. "Oh idol, which bed do you want to sleep on?" "Me?" Fu Jiu lowered her head and threw her school bag away. She looked very handsome. "Either is fine." Baby Feng was very serious. Then I choose to go outside. Bad guys come. I can still protect my idol." Fu Jiu raised her eyebrows and whistled at Feng Shang. "No matter how you look at it, you are the one being protected, right?" Baby Feng. He was speechless. That idol, you and Almighty Qin, what happened to you too?" Student Feng Shang is still very sensitive in certain areas. Fu Jiu turned her head and laid on the bed with her long legs slightly crossed. "Nothing, I'm fine." "Then, why don't you sleep with Almighty Qin?" Why do you want to sleep with me?" Feng Shang's intuition tells me that there's something wrong with this. With the lollipop in her mouth, Fu Jiu lowered her head and unzipped it. "You didn't ask for it." Although it's my request, but it's still not right." Thinking about this, Feng Shang smiled. "Is it true that my idol likes me more than Almighty Qin?" "Baby Feng, you're thinking too much. Almighty Qin is too handsome. I'm afraid that if we stay together at night, I won't be able to resist sleeping with him. What if he beats me up? How inappropriate. Did this mean that he had no value in sleeping with her?" Feng Shang was unconvinced. I'm not bad looking." "That's true." Fu Jiu agreed. "But even if I sleep with you, you will only be suppressed. You won't be able to beat me, so it's relatively safer." Feng Shang was speechless. Why was he always the one being suppressed? Unhappy. There's a message in the WeChat group. Fu Jiu glanced sideways at the phone screen. "Gather downstairs in an hour. We're going to the training center." After reading this sentence, Fu Jiu looked up and smiled lightly. "All right, let's pack up. We're going to meet the friendly team in a bit. I heard they're all girls. Chapter 270. Fujio stopped playing with the rhythm master. She looked up and replied slowly, Lin Feng, believe me, as long as Brother Mo is around, you don't need to care about how cool you are. Even if you are as beautiful as a fairy, you will only attract men. Girls won't look at you. Lin Feng. This was a critical hit. Yunhu followed behind him and gave Fujio a thumbs up, giving her a thumbs up. Fujio was still wearing a black mask when they gathered downstairs. The weather in Tokyo wasn't that warm. In Jiang City, the mask could prevent the smog, and it could keep her warm outside. Those guys from the Supreme Alliance looked like they had just taken a shower. Their hair must have been blown by the wind. Even Uncle Ian had put a lot of mousse on his head. This was Tokyo. If they were in Jiang City, they would be covered in dirt after going out for a walk. Apart from Qin Mo, the only normal person was Shui Yaoyao. Of course, there was also Fujio. In fact, Fujio didn't understand what was going on with his teammates. She turned around and asked Shui Yaoyao, they don't look like they are going to meet a friendly team. They look like they are going on a blind date. Even Baby Feng took off his glasses seriously and put on a pair of brown contact lenses. He looked more than twice as handsome in an instant. Is there a need to go through so much trouble? Fujio waited for Baby Feng to wash his hair for 30 minutes, which is as long as a young girl needs to put on makeup. Lin Feng glanced at Fujio and acted like an experienced person. Little Spade, you don't understand. If you don't dress up when you stand beside Captain, you won't be remembered at all. Moreover, our friendly team is Callie. Think about it, don't you think this is the most important factor in your life to get rid of being single? Fujio repeated the two words, and there was only one sentence in her eyes. I don't know them. All the team members, including Shui Yaoyao, looked at Fujio in surprise. No way, Little Spade, you don't know Callie when you play hero? The expression on Lin Feng's face almost became a highlight. They are so famous, especially in the hearts of us otakus. They are simply a concentration camp for goddesses. Fujio laughed and took off her mask. She pointed at her face and said, you don't deserve to be an otaku with your looks. Otaku have their own standards for looks. I'm so handsome, so forget it. Lin Feng. Damn it, the second wave of attacks. Yes, yes. You're the most handsome. Lin Feng really wanted to drag this guy over and beat him up. But no matter what, it's weird that you don't know Carly. Everyone who follows Hero should know her. Fujio glanced at Qin Mo, who hadn't spoken to her all this time, and suddenly curled up her thin lips. I've only heard of Almighty Qin. I've never heard of anyone else. Lin Feng, Yunhu, Secretary Liang. At this time, people suddenly remembered the news that Little Spade was playing games to chase after Captain. Now it seemed that it was true. When Qin Mo heard this, he lifted his eyes faintly. His eyes were cold, and his voice was low. Do you believe him? Otherwise, why wouldn't a player of Hero know about the Kali Goddess squad? Chapter 271. Brother Mo, if you don't say it out loud, we can still be friends. When Fujio first started playing games, it was indeed to earn some pocket money. Now that she was participating in the national competition, it was also to help He Honghua take back the company. Fujio's words sounded unbelievable to the others. The new player king in Zone C playing hero was actually an accident. What was going on? Fujio looked at everyone's eyes on her and smiled again. But since we decided to play, we will do our best. Our goal is the national competition, right? Lin Feng was still confused. Then what did you want to do at the beginning? Get so many first clears in Zone C. Make money. Fu Zhongyi removed me from the Fu family. My mom's company is in trouble. If we don't make money, our villa will be bought. I can't let that third will get what he wants. First, I need a sum of money. It's quite profitable to help people in games. Fu Jiu was telling the truth. Feng Shang looked at her with a pitiful face. Oh idol, I didn't know you were so poor. Fu Jiu. Did she look poor? She couldn't play with these rich second generations anymore. After hearing this, Shui Yaoyao looked at Fu Jiu in a different light. She never thought that His Highness Jiu would have to deal with all this. She thought that with the Fu family's power, at least His Highness Jiu wouldn't have to make money by himself, but now that she thought about it, if the Fu family didn't have any problems, His Highness Jiu wouldn't have to pretend to be a boy. Maybe it was because His Highness Jiu was so cool and handsome that people forgot that she actually had to shoulder the same burden as everyone else. She was indeed confused. Only people who had been treated unfairly would say those words in front of the media. Fu Jiu saw Shui Yaoyao looking at her, so she looked over and raised her eyebrows. Then she smiled again, looking handsome and gentle. Shui Yaoyao felt her heart melt at that moment. She had found the existence of a benchmark. Okay, let's go out. The business car is here. Secretary Liang basically took over Feng Yi's work. In fact, it was a bit of a waste to let a CEO's secretary do these things. But to ensure that Boss Qin didn't become gay, he had to follow him without anyone else's help. The Qin group was indeed rich. They even chose a top-notch brand for their business car. It was a pure black model that was very comfortable to sit in. Fu Jiu didn't move immediately. Instead, she put half of the yen in her pocket into Shui Yaoyao's palm after everyone got into the MPV. Buy whatever you like. Tokyo is a shopping paradise for women. You probably haven't had time to exchange it for Japanese currency. Shui Yaoyao opened her mouth to reject. Fu Jiu pulled her hand over and dragged her into the car. You can return it to me later, okay? Lin Feng sat in the huge commercial car. When he saw this scene, he couldn't help but rub his chin. Why do I feel that little Spade treats little sister Yao exceptionally well? Didn't you say Supreme Alliance only has one girl and we have to cherish her? Yun who didn't mind. Lin Feng was still mumbling, that's different. Anyway, it's exceptionally good. I can't really describe it. Chapter 272. The training place was the biggest gaming arena in Tokyo. What was the most important thing in gaming? That was the atmosphere. Why were so many people willing to go to the internet cafe when they had a computer at home? Just ask those who have played AU or Dazzle Dance and they'll know. Sitting together, playing the rhythm, typing on the keyboard, that crisp sound made people feel great. It was the same when playing Hero. Hero was a game that paid great attention to strategy and teamwork. That was why so many people liked it. The gaming arena was very lively. All of them were Japanese teenagers who liked gaming. Some of them were even carrying backpacks and beating electronic drums. The first floor was the public area, similar to the large-scale gaming arenas in China. But in Tokyo, this kind of place was very important. Even the people who distributed the flyers were dressed in costumes that were cosplayed from the anime. They were very, very cute girls wearing a pure white fox tail. When they winked at you, not only would boys like them, but girls would also be happy. Shui Yaoyao came here, and it was like she had opened a new world. She looked at everything in surprise. It was really lively here. The dancing machines were arranged in a row, and there were even two dancers fighting on them. Every movement was very handsome. When Fu Jiu and her group came in, people only raised their eyebrows when they saw their uniforms. Chinese? Secretary Liang, a middle-aged man in a suit, was completely out of place here. So he coughed heavily and continued to lead the way. Not this floor. The training base is on the 6th floor. Baby Feng, the otaku who stayed at home all year round, looked at Secretary Liang with doubt, as if to say, are you sure you want to train here, in a place where people come and go? Secretary Liang pushed up the glasses on his face. The place was chosen by Vice President Feng. I believe he must have his reasons for doing so. What reasons? Feng Shang stuttered even harder when he was alone. Secretary Liang. How did he know? He was just a secretary who handled business meetings. How could he know anything about gaming? Because this is the best place to train your reaction speed and hand speed. She glanced at the dance machine on the left, and her eyes seemed to have the afterglow of the lights. When you're tired from playing games, you can come down and exercise a bit to relieve your stress. The dance machine is used to train your body coordination and reflexes. There's a game called Starlight over there, and the principle is similar to Rhythm Master. You can hit the cubes to the music. But if you choose the hard mode, you'll realize that your hands might not be able to keep up with the movements of your eyes. The main problem is that your eyes can't keep up with the speed of the cubes, so it's very useful for training your hand speed and peripheral vision. Not only Feng Shang, but even Secretary Liang was stunned. Then, he came back to his senses and said with certainty, "That's right. What young Master Jiu said is the reason why we chose to train here." Everyone. Are you sure you really know? Secretary Liang didn't care about the awkwardness anymore. He directly led the crowd forward. Lin Feng tilted his head. "Little Spade, we didn't understand Fox Fang's intentions, how did you know? And he's so familiar with this place. This is the first time I've heard that these things can be used to train hand speed." Chapter 273. Hearing that, the team members turned to look at Secretary Liang. Secretary Liang shook his head with a smile. "I didn't know young Master Jiu very well before, so I don't know." The team members were disappointed and went to look elsewhere. Secretary Liang really didn't want to talk about Fu Jiu's glorious past. Moreover, he only knew that young Master Fu liked to go to nightclubs, but he didn't know that he liked to come to places like this and had such a deep intention, to practice his hand speed. Secretary Liang somehow felt that Fu Jiu had noticed something, and she said that specifically to him. But Secretary Liang thought about it carefully and didn't think it was possible. A high school student shouldn't be that meticulous, right? The corners of Fu Jiu's mouth curled up in a scheming manner. When she brushed past him, she smiled again. "Secretary Liang, tell me honestly, are you afraid that I will turn Brother Mo gay?" She spoke in a low voice, and in such a crowded place, only a few people heard it. Moreover, the team members' attention was on all kinds of game consoles. Secretary Liang was always calm, but at this moment, he couldn't help but be shocked. His face was expressionless as he smiled gently. "Young Master Jiu, you think too much." "Oh, then I'll sleep in Brother Mo's room tonight." Fu Jiu liked to tease people like Secretary Liang. "In fact, Brother Mo is quite indulgent with me, don't you think?" Secretary Liang. "What's the difference between your tone and a spoiled concubine's? Can't you just play properly?" He took a deep breath. "Young Master Jiu, you must be joking. CEO Qin has always treated you as a younger brother. After all, he's the only child in the Qin family. He played alone when he was young, and he wanted to get close to you when he saw you." "Oh." Fu Jiu nodded. "I'll believe you for now." Secretary Liang. "For now, but don't worry, no one dares to turn Brother Mo gay." Fu Jiu had one hand in her pocket, and her voice was still indifferent. "Whoever turns him gay will sleep with him. I'm not stupid. You don't have to isolate me and Brother Mo every time you see us together. Be careful, Brother Mo might get angry and send you to the wilderness to be his secretary." The last sentence was the main point. Secretary Liang's heart was in turmoil. He only had one thought: what's wrong with students nowadays? He was suppressed by a college student, Boss Qin. After all, Boss Qin's aura and means were there. Now, he was being suppressed by a high school student. Most importantly, what the young man said made sense. He couldn't refute it. Each floor is truly a different world. Lin Feng didn't hear what Fu Jiu and Secretary Liang were talking about. He nudged the young man with his shoulder. Little Spade, we'll be on the 6th floor soon. Trust me, the scenery on the 6th floor is not about these cold machines. The most important thing is the Cali girls, especially their captain. Have you heard of Ice Beauty Lioli? He lived up to his name. He had a good temperament and good looks. His family owned an entertainment company. He was rich and wealthy. She's young and has just started university, but she's good at playing games. She's very pretty, and she doesn't know any of the popular celebrities at all. She has most of the male fans in Hero, but Miss Luli doesn't lack money, so she doesn't live stream much. She's the same as the captain, very cold and aloof. You'll know when you see her, but you can only watch from afar. After all. Chapter 274. The smart Fu Jiu raised her eyebrows in surprise. She knew very well what Lin Feng meant by, you know. She laughed along with him. Then does the Ice Beauty like Brother Mo? Lin Feng's eyes lit up. Lin Feng nodded hard, as if to say, bro, you're so smart. I figured it out myself, so don't tell anyone. I'm not sure if she likes me or not, but that Ice Beauty smiles every time she sees Captain Fu Jiu. Isn't that called liking? Then tell me what liking looks like, I figured it out. What do you think? I'm good, right? Lin Feng lowered his voice. So, Little Spade, follow your brother in the team, and you'll have meat to eat. Fu Jiu looked at him seriously. If you can figure it out, then everyone else must have figured it out too. What's there to be proud of? Lin Feng, Fu Jiu didn't talk to the petrified Lin Feng anymore. But she felt more and more like this was a blind date, not a friendly team. She suspected that this friendly team was arranged by Manager Feng to stimulate his teammates' energy. For example, in front of beautiful girls, boys would try their best to look as handsome as possible. No wonder people called him Fox Feng, for he could even think of this kind of thing. Oh. Brother Feng. Brother Tiger. Captain. You're finally here. As soon as they reached the 6th floor, they didn't see any girls, but they saw a figure rushing towards them. That figure was none other than the popular Coco. It turned out that he had arrived long ago and came directly to the training ground. I'm not going to the all-star competition anymore, I want to stay with everyone. Fight together. Fatty was there too, but his reaction was completely different from Coco's. He said to Fu Jiu excitedly, I've prepared the computer, how about we PK? How did you dodge my attack last time and throw the virus at me at the same time? That was a beautiful move. Fu Jiu didn't expect Fatty to be so enthusiastic when they met again. Fatty was a fanatical hacker, and he was very persistent in this aspect. Oh right, what's your ranking in our field? How did I? Fatty, Chin Mo said. Chin Mo interrupted him with a cold voice. You want to be a vegetarian for a week again? Instantly, Fatty shut his mouth. Even Coco stood at attention. Boss Chin, Captain, didn't seem to be in a good mood. Even his eyes were as cold as ice. Why? Fatty and Coco turned to look at the members at the same time, trying to find an answer. Everyone used their eyes to express that they didn't know either. For some reason, the atmosphere at the scene was a little stiff. Fortunately, a burst of laughter came from the other side, breaking the tension. Coco asked you to pick someone up. Why are you chatting here? As soon as he finished speaking, no less than 7 long-legged beauties walked over. Each of them was wearing the battle uniform specially made for the battle team. They were all red, with short skirts and long boots, giving off an extremely beautiful feeling. The one who spoke was obviously more imposing, but he wasn't the most good-looking one among them. Chapter 275. Fu Jiu curled up the corner of her lips. This must be the Liuli beauty that Lin Feng was talking about. The beauty brought many girls behind her and walked towards them. It was indeed very pleasing to the eye. Most of the Supreme Alliance members were men. Even a man would feel a little overwhelmed when he saw so many girls. Each of them was extremely pure, looking sideways and pretending to be cool. This made all the beauties in the friendly team laugh. There are girls in the team this time. There was a girl in the Kali team. Her eyes were round as she looked towards Shui Yao Yao. Shui Yao Yao was about to say something. That girl spoke again with a bit of petulance. Coco, you're lying. You said that the Supreme Alliance doesn't want girls. There weren't any before. Coco often does shows and live broadcasts outside, so he knows a lot of people. It's inevitable that he will meet friends who want to join the Supreme Alliance. But he wasn't sure about the captain's recruitment requirements, so he used this excuse to refuse. After all, their intentions were too obvious. They didn't want to join the Supreme Alliance, but they wanted to get close to the captain. In order not to be frozen to death by the captain, of course he couldn't agree to their request, even if they were popular. Secretary Liang laughed. Miss Xiaotong, as long as you are a master, the Supreme Alliance welcomes you. According to Secretary Liang, The cute girl called Xiaotong glanced at Shui Yao Yao, then she smiled and said hesitantly, a beauty? A master? Shui Yao Yao was a little embarrassed. Maybe others couldn't tell, but as a girl, the girl's pause when talking about the beauty showed that there was a hidden meaning in her words. My name is Lin Xiaotong, and I'm called Tong Xiao Dian in the game. You should have heard of me. Lin Xiaotong reached out her hand, seemingly to shake Shui Yao Yao's hand in a friendly manner. Before the people from the Supreme Alliance came, they had already heard about this year's situation from their friends. Not only was there a gay in the Fu family, there was also a very fat girl who was quite famous in No. 1 middle school. It was said that she came from a poor family, liked to steal, and didn't like to bathe. Lin Xiaotong didn't like Shui Yao Yao at first sight. How could such a person be qualified to join the Supreme Alliance? It was an insult to the real professional teams. Lin Xiaotong was waiting for Shui Yao Yao to extend her hand with a smile. She and the entire Kali team were very sweet. Shui Yao Yao had been through a lot. She knew that this was probably a common tactic used by some pretty girls. Some fights only belonged to girls. Boys basically couldn't understand it. Even though she knew that the other party was trying to put her down, Shui Yao Yao couldn't just throw a tantrum at him right now. That would only give people more reasons to talk about her, saying that she had a lot of ugly things to do. Shui Yao Yao clenched her right hand and was about to move. However, there was one person who reached out his hand even faster than her. I'm sorry, we've only heard of Supreme Alliance. We don't know much about the other teams. It was Fu Jiu. With her silver hair and dark eyes, she always gave off a sharp aura. She was such a gentle person. At this moment, even his smiling lips seemed to carry an imperceptible chill. The young man held Lin Xiaotong's hand gently. His side profile was handsome and youthful. Lin Xiaotong stilled. Only Supreme Alliance? Fu Jiu was still laughing. Supreme Alliance is famous. Did he mean that Carly was not famous? Chapter 276. The Kali team also had two girls who were really generous, and they didn't know what they were talking about. Lin Xiaotong was small and sweet, and she thought that she was considerate. But in fact, when something happened, she would think that the other side was picking on her. Such a person would never think that it was she who crossed the other side's bottom line, and that was why there was a follow-up. I'm sorry, our Kali team isn't that famous. Lin Xiaotong said sarcastically, but young Master Fu, sometimes you have to see if your way of doing things is appropriate. After all, you have become a member of the Supreme Alliance. It's better to think about some things before you speak. Fu Jiu raised her eyebrows. I've thought it through, so I have something to ask Secretary Liang. As she said this, the youngster looked sideways and smiled. Is this really a friendly team of our Supreme Alliance? Secretary Liang knew something was wrong when he saw the situation. He was anxious, thinking that Lin Xiaotong, of all people you could have messed with, why did you have to mess with such a tough opponent? Secretary Liang always dealt with things calmly. Yes, let's go in first, and we can talk about the small talk later. Since Secretary Liang said so, Fu Jiu had to give face to old Liang. Secretary Liang. When did he become old Liang? But Lin Xiaotong was not happy. What do you mean by this is really a friendly team of our Supreme Alliance? Young Master Fu, you have to explain yourself, right? It wasn't until this moment that the rough men of the Supreme Alliance realized that something was wrong, and they all looked at Fu Jiu. Did they start a fight? Fu Jiu stopped and looked indifferent. Miss Lin, you are not important enough for me to explain anything. If you really want an explanation, why don't you talk about your attitude just now? Shui Yao Yao is my teammate. I don't care what you think, but please remember one thing. You disrespected her, so you were picking on me. You. Lin Xiaotong still wanted to say something. Beauty Liuli, who was standing beside her, reached out and pressed down on her wrist. Xiaotong, you're used to speaking carelessly, that's why people misunderstand you. Be more careful next time, it's not like we've known Supreme Alliance for the first time, we're all old friends, don't let this cause a rift between us. Young Master Fu, I apologize on behalf of Xiaotong. It's inevitable that there will be friction between the two teams. Now that the Supreme Alliance has new members, we need to work together. This girl wanted to join the Supreme Alliance, but she didn't. Now that she sees you guys in, it's inevitable that she will feel uncomfortable. Fu Jiu looked at Liuli. As Liuli spoke, she nodded at Lin Xiaotong's head with a faint smile in a very intimate manner. When Shui Yao Yao heard this, she tugged at the corner of Fu Jiu's clothes. She didn't want to cause trouble for His Highness Jiu. Fu Jiu looked sideways at that round face, and it was easy to think of He Honghua at home. If it weren't for Shui Yao Yao, Yin Wuyao, and Feng Shang, there wouldn't be a selection contest. She couldn't let anyone trample on her people. That was her principle. So it's jealousy. Fu Jiu laughed and looked at Lin Xiaotong. That's easy to understand. Chapter 277. Liuli was a person who knew how to conduct herself, not to mention that she didn't want to waste the few opportunities to get close to that man this year. Of course, she couldn't change it because of other things. She leaned to the left. Let's go in and have a look. This year's scale is bigger than in previous years. Sakura Stream Team is also training. We had a fight with them 3 days ago. To be honest, we were badly beaten. Sakura Stream Team's fighting power has more than doubled. Compared with last year, they are like two different people. Now, every minute and every second is very important to you. As for the running in, we can take our time. Now, let's go to the training. These words easily made the attention of the Supreme Alliance members focus on how strong the Sakura Stream squad was. Their original playful thoughts also became serious, and they didn't think about the small frictions just now. The training room wasn't a rigid office. There were a few computers placed around the training room for the team members to practice their skills. If that was the case, it would be more convenient to stay in Jiang City, and they wouldn't have to fly to Tokyo. The training room here was more like a very large internet cafe. No, it wasn't exactly an internet cafe. It was full of computers, and there were countless people sitting there. But these people were fundamentally different from the ordinary people who played games in the internet cafe. They were all professional players from all over Tokyo. If they wanted to play games, they would come here to relax. That was to say, every person you met here was a professional player. Every professional player had a different playing style. Training here could effectively help the Supreme Alliance judge which playing style to use when facing the national competition. What do you think? When Lioli said this, she tilted her head towards Qin Mo, and there was a soft smile at the corner of her mouth. Seeing this scene, do you want to go down and have a fight? Qin Mo put one hand in his trouser pocket and didn't say anything. Instead, he looked at the youngster not far away. Fu Jiu stood by Shui Yaoyao's side, with a lollipop in her mouth. Her expression was very indifferent, but because of that, it seemed that the youngster was protecting the person next to him. Qin Mo's gaze paused, his fingers tightening. She looked over and saw that he was looking at Fu Jiu. Her beautiful eyebrows couldn't help but wrinkle, and then she said with a smile, I heard that Spade Z is very powerful. I know people from the Fu family, but I didn't expect Spade Z to be him. No matter what, with Spade Z joining the team, the Supreme Alliance's attack power should be stronger. But I heard that he hasn't gone through professional training. I wonder if there will be any flaws in the National League. Fu Jiu smiled and said, You're right. I won't, Qin Mo replied. His voice was calm and his side profile was still handsome and noble. Lioli smiled faintly. For Almighty Qin to be so sure, even I want to spar with him. I can see that he's quite loyal and protective. That chubby girl should be quite happy being by his side. Hearing this, Qin Mo retracted his gaze and looked at Lioli's face. Lioli's smile became even sweeter. There wasn't the slightest hint of coldness that an ice beauty should have. Whether it was the Supreme Alliance or the Kali team, they were all looking at this scene, imagining a lot of things. Captain and Almighty Qin are so compatible. Chapter 278. Shui Yaoyao didn't think so. She had seen Almighty Qin in a completely relaxed state, but it wasn't like this. Instead, he pinched the youngster's chin with a smile on the badminton court. There was something indescribable in his eyes. Although it might not necessarily be called liking, it was obvious that when Almighty Qin and Highness Jiu were together, they were always different. But of course, she wouldn't say this out loud. Because some words would put people in a difficult position. She came from a small family, but she also understood that she shouldn't put her own self-righteous imagination on others. You can fantasize, but don't be bothered by it. Secretary Liang knew the most about this. He knew who Boss Qin disliked being paired with the most. He immediately said, let's try the machine first. If it's not, I'll make arrangements. Such a formal statement naturally made Carly's side much quieter. Come. Let's play a few rounds. Lin Feng zipped up his jacket and got ready to go. The others also handed their backpacks to Secretary Liang. The members of the Kali squad also smiled at each other and sat next to them. The input method displayed on the machine was Japanese, so it needed to be changed. Shui Yaoyao didn't have the chance to learn Japanese, so she didn't know where to place her hands on the keyboard. There were 3 or 4 people on Carly's side, but they had no intention of helping at all. They chatted and laughed as they entered the game. Usually, it was best for girls to help other girls in such matters. Shui Yaoyao knew that he wouldn't help her. The effects of being fat and poor on a person were far from obvious. She lowered her head and tried to press the keyboard, but it was still a little difficult. At that moment, everyone heard the sound of a chair being pulled. Fu Jiu stood up and walked to the seat next to Shui Yaoyao. Then, she pointed at the girl who was still laughing. Please change seats. The members of the Kali team also liked Fu Jiu's face. The girl blushed and wanted to act coquettishly with Fu Jiu. Do you have to change? I quite like being here. Fu Jiu smiled and suddenly leaned down. She held the back of the chair with one hand, and her thin lips slid past her left ear. You insisted on changing. Qin Mo couldn't be more familiar with this action. But this time, his eyes were filled with coldness. After being flirted with in such a way, the girl was already confused. When she sat down again, she didn't know why she gave in so easily. But Spade Z was really handsome. He wasn't gay like they said at all. That girl changed her seat and was still smiling sweetly at Fujiu. This scene was naturally seen by everyone. Lin Feng whistled. You're amazing, my Z. Is this a common posture for picking up girls? How could that be? Fujiu was telling the truth. But no one believed her. Lin Feng tapped on the keyboard. What he meant was that he would teach his brother a few backup moves when they entered the game later. Fujiu blinked and nodded with a smile. Qin Mo still had earphones on his black hair. When he saw the youngster sitting beside him, he turned his perfectly chiseled handsome face to the side. Because the youngster was so close to him, his eyes finally regained a trace of warmth. Chapter 279. The first thing Fujiu did when she sat down wasn't to touch her computer, but to turn around and tilt to a certain degree. She held the mouse beside Shui Yaoyao's hand and said in a soft voice, instead of familiarizing yourself with the input method here, why don't I help you download the one we Chinese are used to? Fujiu's hand speed was really fast. Even in such a position, it was no problem for her to switch and crack. After the program was installed, she pressed enter, and it was the familiar Chinese input method. Not every key was used in the game, so there was no need to explain the Japanese sound. As long as the account password was entered, there would be no obstacles in the operation. Shui Yaoyao looked at the screen in front of her, still surprised that His Highness Jiu would notice her. She saw that the young man had already sat up straight and put on his headphones. If you have any problems, tell me. Shui Yaoyao agreed and also entered battle mode. This was indeed a good place to improve her strength. Shui Yaoyao had her own ideas. She saw His Highness Jiu's protectiveness. Because of this, she wanted to make herself stronger. She didn't want a situation like today to happen a second time, and she wanted His Highness Jiu to stand up for her. His Highness Jiu also had his own things to do. If she really wanted to help His Highness Jiu one day. Wasn't she strong? What qualifications did she have? Sometimes, even Shui Yaoyao herself didn't know that under Fujiu's influence, her thoughts had changed. Be good to your parents, even if you were wronged outside. Be stronger to be qualified to say that you were a useful person. Fujiu was indeed good to Shui Yaoyao. This had nothing to do with Shui Yaoyao, but she herself wanted to be good to this girl. Sensible, kind, loyal. Yes, loyal. The first two were easy to do, but the last one was getting rarer and rarer nowadays. As long as it didn't suit her, she would easily betray her. This was something that too many people would do, as early as that day, when Shui Yaoyao handed her the school uniform and asked her to cover the blood on her back. Fujiu knew that this person was worth her effort to teach. She was very clear that there were too many people who liked her because she was dressed as a man. Once she returned to being a woman, she might face a lot of questions and disgust. But Shui Yaoyao didn't ask anything. She just accompanied her and walked silently. There was never a need to ask for true support. This was Liang Chao's love for Karina Lau. Friends should also be like this, however, in the eyes of others, such a scene would have a different meaning. After all, Fujiu was still in men's clothes. Every time she turned her head to talk to Shui Yaoyao, it looked very intimate. Qin Mo glanced sideways. It was rare that his attention wasn't entirely on the computer screen. It was a 1v1 qualifier. The person on the other end didn't know Chinese either, so he typed a sentence in Japanese. The gist of it was, why are you standing there for so long? Why aren't you fighting? If you don't fight, I'll leave after I drain your last drop of blood. Who would have thought that as soon as he said that? There was a burst of silver light on the screen, and before he could even move, he was directly KO'd on the arena. One move. Killed by him in one move. Chapter 280. When did China's esports become so powerful? That professional player was a little suspicious. He wanted to confirm the other party's identity. After all, Some people in Tokyo also used Chinese characters to name themselves. Who knew that at this moment, there was a loud bang. The person next to him fiercely tapped on the keyboard and said in Japanese, "Are you kidding me? So fast. I didn't even have time to react, and it's even a Chinese name." The pro player heard his friend's words and turned to look at his computer. It was a man again. He couldn't understand it, only a code name. Z? Fujio had always been like this when she played games. In a 1v1, she would definitely destroy the opponent quickly. However, what Lioli didn't understand was why the man sitting next to her was playing so differently from before. What was wrong with the lazy, noble, and unhurried man today? The coldness in Chin Mo's eyes was transmitted into the game through the mouse and keyboard. Just when the members of Supreme Alliance finally eliminated one and were about to eliminate the second one, they saw their captain's name appear on the Japanese server's leaderboard. Entered the rankings. Although it was a 1v1 ranking, what would the pro players who came here every day think? Anne. Little Spade, what the hell are you doing? Do you have to be so crazy? You're only one rank behind Captain. Lin Feng turned his head and looked in Fujio's direction. He knocked on his headphones, asking Fujio to listen to the voice. Fujio whispered while playing the game, "What's wrong? What's going on with you and Captain? Was he trying to drive them crazy?" Lin Feng lowered his voice and said, in front of the girls, "Give me some face. Don't be too handsome, or else how am I going to attack later?" Fujio chuckled. "I'm fast when I play games. I'll slow down later. Actually, it's fine if it's just you, but why is even the captain like this today?" Lin Feng let out a long sigh. His usual style wasn't like this. Could it be that the girl's stimulation method was also suitable for Captain? Lioli was so beautiful that even the captain was convinced. When Fujio heard this, she looked towards the empty space on her left. Chin Mo waved the mouse in his hand, his left hand sliding across the keyboard. His fingers moved so quickly that no one could see his movements clearly. This was the first time Fujio had watched the Almighty play games in real life. Very handsome. His fingers looked good too. No wonder so many people wanted to watch the Almighty's live stream. Their specialties were indeed different. What's more, that devilishly handsome face always gave people an indescribable sense of nobility. The positions of the two captains were different from them. There would be an empty space in the middle. This was a characteristic of every team captain. Perhaps because he was too focused on the fight, his black hair fell down and moved with the man's movements, giving off a very cool feeling. Fujio couldn't help but take a few more glances, but she couldn't help but meet the gaze of the person sitting beside Chin Mo. This wasn't strange. After all, Lioli hadn't started a game since Chin Mo started the game. Instead, she had been looking at the man sitting next to her. Because it was only at this time that the infatuation in her eyes would not be discovered. But he didn't expect the young man to turn around. Chapter 281. Unconsciously, Lioli furrowed her eyebrows lightly. Usually, people's subconscious reactions were the most real. At that moment, she couldn't control her emotions. She couldn't hide the dislike in her eyes, and it was conveyed to the young man. Fujio only raised her eyebrows and looked at Lioli with interest. That glance made Lioli react quickly. Her current demeanor was not right. She immediately smiled with a hint of shyness, as if Fujio had seen through her secret love for Almighty Chin and nothing else. Fujio was a little shy. She was just a little shy. Such a girl was very smart, and she wouldn't let anyone see through her. However, Fujio was reborn, and she had been in contact with many people. Plus, she was also a woman. Women knew the subtleties between women the best. She was almost certain that Captain Luli was not as generous as the rumors made her out to be. On the contrary, Captain Luli did not like her, and could even be said to hate her. However, in front of everyone, she had shown that she was capable and magnanimous. Fujio retracted her gaze and looked at the game character she was controlling. This friendly team wasn't friendly to them. The them here didn't refer to the Supreme Alliance. It referred to her and Shui Yaoyao. The captain was like this, and the team members were like this. Thinking of this, Fujio raised her hand and slashed at the game character. No matter how the other side looked at them, it was best to keep this thought in mind and not do anything. Otherwise, she wouldn't give face to anyone. She was a girl herself, so she didn't need to be protective of the fairer sex. Time passed slowly, and no one noticed the brief exchange of glances. Secretary Liang was standing behind Qin Mo, and his attention was all on Qin Mo's left hand. CEO Qin's hand was still injured, so he couldn't do this for a long time. Moreover, CEO Qin's attack was especially aggressive today. Why? Secretary Liang didn't understand, but he kept an eye on the time. When it was almost an hour, he immediately stopped the game, because he was worried that it would exceed the endurance of Qin Mo's left hand. Lin Feng and the others hadn't had enough yet, so they all turned around and looked at Secretary Liang. Secretary Liang chuckled. It's already 5:00. It's not easy for the two teams to meet, so let's have dinner together. I've already arranged the restaurant. Miss Lioli, please. Outside, of course, guests had priority. The girls also liked this kind of treatment. They all logged off the game and stood up. The Supreme Alliance members were hungry too. They wanted to eat meat, not the simple meals on the plane. They packed their things and retreated quickly. When Sakura Stream Squad got the news and rushed here, there was no Chinese in the training team. But the influence of Qin Mo and Fujio still remained. Amazing. Is it a Chinese team? It should be, but I don't know which row he's sitting in. On this side, the other members of the Tokyo squad were still looking for them when they saw the members of Sakura Stream Squad in their uniforms coming in. In Tokyo, the influence of Sakura Stream was equivalent to that of the Supreme Alliance in Jiang City. Hence, when they walked in, the rest of the teams were all shocked. Sakura Stream, why are they here? Chapter 282. Definitely strong. I heard that they have entered the national competition, and got the first place in the regional competition. Ah! I also watched that game. The old players didn't play, and only the new players played so well. This year's Sakura Stream team is really unfathomable. I heard that in the friendly match with China the day before yesterday, they also suppressed the opponent in all aspects. But the Chinese team is all girls, this, you know. There was a hubbub of voices as people discussed one after another. The captain of Sakura Stream team didn't care, but after glancing at the group, he asked the person next to him, I heard that there are 2 Chinese players here who are very good at ranking, right? There are indeed 2. When the Tokyo people were excited, their tone would rise. But they don't seem to be here now, and I can't see them in the game. The players of Sakura Stream team heard this and frowned. That's a pity. They also wanted to see who was here to give all the Tokyo teams a show of strength. Sakura Stream team had 3 friendly matches this time. The first one had already been played. There were 2 more. One of them was said to be against the number 1 team in the country from China. So, Sakura Stream team thought that it was the Xiangnan team that had just arrived. They didn't consider the Supreme Alliance, because no matter how humble the Japanese looked, they were born with pride in their blood. In their eyes, anyone who wasn't number 1 was not qualified to compete with them. Even if they knew that in the Supreme Alliance, there was a person that their captain had lost to. But so what? After the individual ranking match, it was the duo match, and then the team match. Except for the individual matches, they were not sure. In the remaining 2 matches, the Supreme Alliance was not at the same level as them. What's more, now the captain had become the most valuable esports player in Tokyo, and both his hand speed and skills had improved a lot. Even if the opponent had beaten the captain. Now it was impossible for him to be the opponent of the captain, it should be the Xiangnan team that arrived early. The one who spoke was the vice-captain of Sakura's Dream Team. He smiled and looked a bit handsome. Prepare well. The captain of Sakura's Dream Team calmly agreed, and took the team out of the training ground. Captain Yamaguchi. The three players standing there opened their mouths. One of them casually put his hand on the shoulder of the other. We're going to practice our hand speed here, you go back first. Yamaguchi turned his head and glanced at the rookie king that their team had just recruited this year. He said in a low voice, Shuji, don't cause trouble. How could that be? The man called Shuji smiled slowly. The Tokyo teams really like to practice their hand speed here. Therefore, Yamaguchi had no reason to stop his teammates. But after the troops left, the look in Shuji's eyes changed immediately. This person had always been bloodthirsty. During the qualifiers, it was easy to see the ruthlessness in his body. Tokyo was their territory. How could they allow those ignorant Chinese to steal the limelight? So what if he left? He would come back eventually. He was waiting right here. Teach that China's #1 team a lesson. In reality, the Supreme Alliance's group didn't leave. Chapter 283. No matter what kind of person Liuli was, she was right about one thing. Right now, the most important thing for Supreme Alliance was time. Because in this team, there were 4 new members who hadn't played together in a match yet. According to this situation, it meant that there was no change in the lineup. To make full use of everyone's abilities, they had to do a combination. But time didn't allow for it. Originally, the Qin group's internal competition was held in advance to break in. But no one expected that Qin Mo would cancel the qualification. So not only outsiders, but even Secretary Liang didn't quite understand Qin Mo's decisions at certain times. Feng Yi was more optimistic about this approach, and he praised, as the saying goes, there can be no construction without destruction. Supreme Alliance has been established for so long, it's time to do something unexpected. It was indeed unexpected. After all, the new members didn't have many competition records, and their opponents didn't have enough data to analyze them. But at the same time, breaking in was a big deal. As an attendant, Secretary Liang saw all the pros and cons in his eyes. And as a member of a professional team, he knew this better than anyone else. After the dishes were served, Carly chuckled and said to Fujio in a seemingly unintentional manner, "We all watched your match, and it was indeed wonderful. But those people were too inexperienced, and they were flustered by your luring. Otherwise, they wouldn't have been so defenseless against a new account like you. Their attention was completely diverted away from you. Peking University is still the best." One person diverted the entire opponent's attack power, and he held on for so long. With such a god blocking in front, it should be easy to win the selection contest, right? The implication of this sentence was that Yin Wuyao was the main reason why she had such a wonderful victory in the selection contest. In fact, Fujio had only used her strategy a little better, and that was because her opponent was too weak. Fujio listened to that, and her thin lips curled up. She put a piece of meat in her mouth and said meaningfully, "It was very easy." Yin Wuyao frowned. He was old, and he had suffered many betrayals when he was in a professional team. In fact, he didn't like the undercurrent between professional players. This was because some of them had formed a habit when they spoke. They wouldn't just say whatever they wanted to say. They would praise one person and belittle another. Only he himself knew what kind of existence the youth was in his heart. If it wasn't for Spade Z, he would never play in the professional league again. He really didn't understand how this member of the Cali squad could be so imaginative. She even looked as if she had guessed correctly. Others had never thought about what they had thought about. Besides, did Spade Z need to prove his ability? 99 FC kills in Zone C. Other than Qin Mo, who else had achieved such a result? Are these women blind or what? Even if it was a new account, it still needed to be skillful in order to wipe out the entire team. Yin Wuyao, who had wanted to act cool in front of the girls before he left the house, now only had the corners of his mouth twitched, and he didn't have any other thoughts. He finally understood why the team captain asked Secretary Liang, "Is this really their friendly team?" Of course, a man wouldn't fuss over something like that with the other party. Chapter 284. Even if there was enmity, it was targeted. Moreover, they were all old friends, so they didn't mind teasing each other. So the other members of Supreme Alliance didn't understand the meaning behind those words. It had nothing to do with intelligence. It was a hidden sense of xenophobia under that enthusiasm. Only the xenophobic person could understand it. And the teammates who had been through so many things with Fu Jiu could feel it even more clearly. Even if it wasn't too obvious, they could still get a little bit of it. "Oh yeah, Yao Yao, did you not go through professional training?" A girl sitting next to Shui Yao Yao leaned over and lowered her voice to a volume that only the two of them could hear. "I'll teach you after dinner. You've always been playing in the wilderness, so you probably don't know much about teamwork. There are some things that you need to pay attention to. Anyway, we're all friends, so you can ask me if you don't understand anything. Also, we all know about your family's financial situation. If you need any help, you can come to us. We're all girls, unlike guys like them, who don't care about such things." There was nothing wrong with those words. However, the girl quickly added, "In the future, if there's anything you like, just tell us directly. But there's one thing, we don't like it when people touch our things without even greeting us. Don't bring out your bad habits from school." Bam! Shui Yao Yao stood up. The others didn't know why, but they saw that her whole face was red, and she gritted her teeth. "What do you mean by that?" Shui Yao Yao was still trying to persuade herself that even if the other team was scheming, she shouldn't have a direct confrontation. After all, once something happened, it would cause trouble for Highness Jiu. Even if they called her fat or ugly, it didn't matter. Anyway, it wasn't the first time she had been criticized in school. But the other party pointed out the one thing she couldn't tolerate the most, stealing. That person was basically saying, "You're so poor, tell us if you like anything. We can give it to you, but you can't steal from us." Shui Yao Yao thought that after that interview, the truth should have been revealed. But sometimes, it wasn't like that. Some people believed that she was what she was. There was no reason, just because she was poor. Therefore, there was no guarantee that he would have such thoughts. The one thing Shui Yao Yao regretted the most was returning the thing she picked up to its owner. The owner was just like the beauty in front of him. She had an expression that said, "You liked my stuff, so you stole it from me. After stealing it, you were afraid of being discovered, so you returned it." Why were there so many people in the world like this? Shui Yao Yao didn't understand. Her anger and depression had pushed her to the limit, and when it exploded, everyone in the restaurant was looking in her direction, their gazes filled with strong disapproval. The members of Supreme Alliance were stunned. After all, no one heard the conversation between the girl and Shui Yao Yao. Shui Yao Yao couldn't help but clench her fists when she saw the gazes directed at her. Perhaps in the eyes of most people, her current behavior would make her look like an ugly, fat, and uncultured poor person. Chapter 285. The beautiful girl from the Cali team, who was sitting opposite Shui Yao Yao, had a frightened look on her face. She shrank her shoulders in fear. Plus, she was petite, so she always spoke softly to everyone. Now that she shrunk, it gave people the impression that Shui Yao Yao was being unreasonable. No one knew what was going on. This time, there was no one else sitting next to Shui Yao Yao except for that girl. Because the dining table was rectangular, Japanese-Chinese food meant that everyone had their own portion, so the male team members all sat opposite, including Fu Jiu and Feng Shang. Feng Shang's first reaction was to grab Shui Yao Yao's hand and ask her to sit down. Shui Yao Yao sat down too, but her expression showed no sign of backing down. Even Feng Shang could feel her fingers trembling because she was holding it in. Feng Shang wasn't a person who knew how to judge people, but he knew that no one would be this angry if they weren't really wronged. He could even empathize at that moment and wanted to ask Shui Yao Yao what was going on. However, before anyone could open their mouth, the girl's eyes reddened. Did I say something wrong? I apologize if I hurt your self-esteem by talking about your family. But I wanted to teach you how to play with good intentions. Not only me, but everyone in our team knows that if a player without professional training suddenly joins a team like the Supreme Alliance and participates in the national competition, it will be easy for them to not cooperate well. I told you all this because we are too familiar with the Supreme Alliance and don't want to see their level drop. Lin Xiaotong looked like she couldn't stand it anymore. She pulled the girl aside and said to Shui Yao Yao in a cold voice, "Who did we offend? Not only did you not listen to other people's opinions, but you also shouted at us. Is this how the new members of the Supreme Alliance behave?" Shui Yao Yao was filled with hatred. She looked at the girl and thought that she was too stupid. How could someone with such looks say such things? She took a deep breath and knew that it was useless to say anything else. She didn't know how to act, and she didn't have the girl's beauty. But she gritted her teeth and said, "Don't talk about my family, and don't slander me." Slander? The beautiful woman widened her eyes, as if she didn't know what was going on. Lioli pulled her hand and pretended to lecture her. Yao Yao is different from us. The environment she comes into contact with is different from ours. Watch your words. Then, she smiled at Yao Yao. I didn't expect Yao Yao to be such a sensitive girl. Your family situation shouldn't be discussed so casually. But Yao Yao, what others say doesn't mean anything bad to you. Don't be so impulsive in the future. Look at what you did, everyone in the restaurant is looking at us. Yao Yao smiled at Yao Yao. Shui Yao Yao had no way to refute such an argument. Only then did she realize that the one with the highest level of humor wasn't the girl who had mocked her and then pretended to be innocent. Instead, it was the captain of Carly, Beauty Azure. Things were obviously not like that, but she made it sound like that. Shui Yao Yao's fingers drooped in despair. Then at this moment, Chapter 286. As soon as Fu Jiu said that, everyone quieted down. Secretary Liang, who still wanted to say something, was stunned by the sudden aura. He retracted his long legs that were about to take a step forward. That pretty girl with red eyes paused, clenched her fingers, and turned her head to look at her captain, Lioli. Lioli looked up and met the silver-haired youngster's eyes. Her mind was very active, and she said naturally, "What guidance?" Supreme Alliance and Cali have been friends for so many years, and a competition would hurt the relationship. The Supreme Alliance people didn't know what was going on. All they saw was Shui Yao Yao getting angry at Gui Gui, and they couldn't judge anything else. So they had to admit that Lioli was right. A competition at this time would obviously hurt the relationship. Coco reached out his hand to pull Fujio, meaning that she should sit down first and talk about it later. Fujio slowly narrowed her eyes, and she didn't want to back down at all. Lioli chuckled, and she wanted to say something more. Just at this moment, an indifferent and deep voice suddenly came from the other side. Didn't you just say that winning or losing in the selection contest has nothing to do with him, and that he is not good enough? Since that's the case, then guide him. No one expected Qin Mo to speak at this time. Even Secretary Liang couldn't help but look at his CEO. Coco was even more confused about his captain's actions. The captain was so smart that he must know that a competition at this time would affect the relationship between the two teams. Lioli's expression froze, and she looked at that still handsome and noble face in disbelief. Usually at this time, men wouldn't care, but why this time? Qin Mo didn't speak anymore, and he leaned back with a lazy and imposing posture. It was obvious that he didn't say those words casually. Lin Xiaotong wasn't good at Chinese, and Qin Mo's tone was very calm, so she laughed out loud in her heart. Even Almighty Qin said that this useless young master of the Fu family was not good enough, and he asked someone to guide him. It seemed that Almighty Qin had enough of this legendary rookie king, Spade Z. He was arrogant, and he even brought an ugly and fat pig into the Supreme Alliance, and protected him again and again. Lin Xiaotong sneered. Did he really think that the Supreme Alliance was his? Now, Almighty Qin had spoken. In that case, there was no need for them to be polite. Lin Xiaotong and Gui Gui, whose eyes were still red, looked at each other. Gui Gui smiled and said, "Since Almighty Qin has said so, then let's have a match. Friendship first, competition second. If I win, please don't take it to heart, young Master Fu." Of course. Fu Jiu looked at Qin Mo when she said this. Qin Mo didn't have any special expression. He held the Japanese teacup in his hand, looking elegant and cold. It was a 1v1 qualifier. The closest game location was the training ground. The team members returned to their reserved seats and entered the game to watch the match. At this moment, Supreme Alliance was in a complicated mood. There were also 2 or 3 girls in the Cali team who felt that the atmosphere today was unusually strange. Xiaotong and Gui Gui weren't like this in the past. Perhaps that Shui Yao Yao and Fu Jiu were too annoying. Chapter 287. They completely believed in Gui Gui's ability. As an official member of the Cali team, Gui Gui was not only outstanding in Jiang City, but also had a certain fan influence all over the country. Different from her sweet appearance, her attack power was very strong, and her maneuvers were sharp. Even if this Spade Z was the FC King, that was only when he was playing in the wild and playing with his teammates to clear dungeons. Spade Z would only show how powerful he was if his opponent was weak. In fact, people like this were not rare in the whole country. The members of the Cali team had their own ideas. So, in their eyes, Gui Gui was guiding Fu Jiu in this impromptu match. However, none of them noticed that the moment the silver-haired young man put on his headphones, he seemed to have changed completely. That pair of black and white eyes no longer exuded an enchanting smile, but a completely black glint. That kind of stubborn, bloodthirsty look. Gui Gui didn't have any strategy. She just felt that facing a newbie, she just needed to be vigilant enough. Even if that person was the FC King, she hadn't played as many professional matches as she had. In a 1v1, there was no one to block the knife for him. With her own attack power, Spade Z could not last more than 5 minutes. Gui Gui was waiting for the final countdown in the game. It's starting. As soon as the words, Coco, were typed. The character with the name Spade Z waved his hand and threw out an unexpected stun skill. Gui Gui wanted to dodge subconsciously so that she wouldn't be hit. Pfft, such a child's play. Gui Gui manipulated her character, turned sideways, and laughed disdainfully. However, she didn't expect that right at this moment. A pure black silhouette suddenly jumped out from her empty left side. Gui Gui's eyes widened. When did it happen? How did he come here? She didn't see him at all. She didn't even notice him. After the stun skill, he could still continue to attack. Gui Gui had never seen this kind of fighting style. Spade Z. Just how fast was his hand speed? Not only Gui Gui, but also the Cali team members who were watching this match froze with their right hands that were holding the mouse. Click. Fu Jiu's slender hands were still dancing on the keyboard. Following the rhythmic tapping sound, she raised her sword. A bright light flashed on the screen, and Gui Gui's body splattered with a huge amount of blood. Her HP bar had been cut in half. But that was not the most important thing. Most importantly, at the same time, Fu Jiu was able to free her hand to type, I will slowly kill the remaining half of your HP. Next, I will attack your right hand. As soon as Gui Gui heard those words, she subconsciously wanted to raise her defense. But thinking was one thing, and acting was another. Before she could defend herself, another wound appeared on her body. His HP dropped by another half. But at this moment, no one understood why Fujio stopped. Tilting his head to look, the young man was indeed no longer attacking. Instead, he was sucking on a lollipop and holding the mouse in his hand. There was a devilish smile on his face. Heal. Lin Xiaotong couldn't help but turn on her microphone to remind Gue Gue, who was stunned. Logically speaking, this was against the rules. Chapter 288. Gue Gue didn't care about anything else. Staying alive was the most important thing, so she quickly replenished her HP. But at the moment when her HP was fully replenished, Fujio typed on the keyboard and moved beautifully. With a slight shake of the mouse, she used her ultimate skill. But it only took a second. Gue Gue's HP was reduced by half. Lin Xiaotong watched from the side and hammered the table heavily. Left side, there is a gap on his left side. The spectators could see things that the players couldn't. With such a piece of information, Gue Gue pulled out her sword and wanted to slash at Spade Z. But that person was already in front of her. However, in the next second, with a swift movement, he silently appeared behind her, just like those experts from ancient times. Fujio smiled lightly and lowered her sword. Gue Gue only had 1/10 of her HP left. Similarly, at this moment, Fujio didn't move again. Her black clothes were cold, and her long life was like jade. Gue Gue continued to heal. History repeated itself for the third time. Not only her, but the spectators also realized what was going on. Little Spade did it on purpose. He deliberately gave her time to heal, and then cut off her HP bar. He did this over and over again. He was simply torturing her slowly. Half an hour. This game had been going on for half an hour. Spade Z just didn't want to cut off the last drop of her HP. In this half an hour, she was as embarrassed as she could be. She felt a sense of helplessness that she had never felt before. And every time Spade Z attacked her, he would tell her where he was. But she couldn't even put up a simple defense. Lioli couldn't sit still in front of the computer. She went to Secretary Liang. Secretary Liang, it's about time. It's getting late. If we continue, it will really hurt our relationship. How could Secretary Liang make such a decision? Whether the midfield could be suspended or not depended on Boss Qin's decision. But Qin Mo just played with his slender fingers with his deep eyes, as if he didn't see anything. His side profile was handsome and noble. Secretary Liang's heart couldn't help but skip a beat when he saw this scene. Could it be that when Boss Qin agreed to this match, he had already planned to shed all pretense of cordiality? Secretary Liang had been by Qin Mo's side for a long time. He knew that once Qin Mo made a move, he would be ruthless. How was this letting Carly's team members guide young Master Fu? It was obviously letting young Master Fu teach others a lesson. President Qin, this is not the way to spoil your little brother. However, the Cali team couldn't see through Almighty Qin's plan. Lin Xiaotong couldn't wait any longer. She took advantage of the time when Gue Gue was replenishing her HP, and swapped her computer with Gue Gue. You guys. Feng Shang really didn't expect the other party to be so insatiable. It's fine if they just revealed information outside the arena, but now they're even changing people. Everyone knew that playing games had a certain level of fatigue. This meant that Fujio would have to face a new fighting force. But unexpectedly, the more it was like this, the more bloodthirsty Fujio's smile became. That devilish attitude was just like how she used to hack into the network. In front of the computer, Fujio was wearing pure black headphones in her silver hair. Her side profile was fair and handsome, and she moved the mouse in her hand. Intense and beautiful silver light shot out in unison. Chapter 289. It didn't even take a minute. Lin Xiaotong, who was ready for another round, was killed in seconds. Not only the Kali people, but also the Supreme Alliance people were shocked. After all, that hand's speed was too fast. The whole screen in front of Lin Xiaotong was filled with silver light. As the last ray of silver light fell, her character fell heavily to the ground. Lin Xiaotong couldn't accept such an ending. She squeezed the mouse in her palm and wanted to crush it. Their Kali team was the goddess in the hearts of all otakus. When had they ever been humiliated like this? However, after the killing, Fu Jiu chuckled and typed 4 words. It was those 4 words. All the members of the Kali team froze. She said, "Thank you for your guidance." That was a slap in the face. After all, they were the ones who wanted to guide each other. In the end, the members of the Kali team didn't want to mention this result at all. Gue Gue, who had been tortured by Fu Jiu again and again, was a little dazed. But Lin Xiaotong's anger hadn't subsided yet. But even if she was angry, what could she do? That, "Thank you for your guidance," was in front of them, and it made them angry but speechless. These beauties also wanted to ask their friends from the Supreme Alliance to help say a few words about Spade Z. He was a man, so how could he win against a woman? But Qin Mo stood up at this time, with one hand in his trouser pocket, and said casually, "Don't try to guide my team casually in the future." After saying this, Qin Mo looked in the direction of the youngster. "Leave when you're done." "Why are you still sitting there?" Fu Jiu laughed. "Yes, Captain." The members of the Kali team all froze. At first, they thought that the reason why Almighty Qin agreed was because they were friends. And Captain Lioli, but now, Almighty Qin's words were too obvious. And it was full of coldness, which could be regarded as a very serious warning. Lioli couldn't possibly not understand, so she also stood up. "Almighty Qin, our team members really meant well. Whether it's good intentions or not depends on the recipient, not the one who sent the invitation." Qin Mo chuckled, his gaze icy. "Both Zi and Shui Yao Yao were recruited by me. No matter how much you think they aren't suited to stay in Supreme Alliance, don't show it. If you do, as the captain, I will treat you as my enemy." The Kali team members' ears buzzed when they heard the last sentence. Shui Yao Yao never thought that Almighty Qin would speak up for her. She thought Almighty Qin didn't like her. In fact, Almighty Qin's gaze was very obvious. Whenever his gaze fell on her, it would always become unfriendly. But, under such circumstances. However, he said, "As the captain, I will treat you all as enemies." Shui Yao Yao finally understood why there were so many people who trusted Almighty Qin for no reason. Because this person was really domineering. At that moment, she felt that Almighty Qin and Highness Jiu were strangely similar. No wonder the two of them admired each other so much. It had nothing to do with appearance. It was because the two of them had the same beautiful 3 views. Chapter 290. Fu Jiu walked in front of Qin Mo with a deep smile. "As a new member, I didn't embarrass Brother Mo, did I?" Qin Mo laughed as well. He grabbed the youngster's collar with one hand and pulled him forward. His voice was deep. "Stop flirting. Other than hand speed, there are other things you need to train." Qin Mo glanced sideways at the 2 members of the Kali team. "You should thank them for being your sparring partner." Sparring partner? Almighty Qin was talking about sparring. No matter how bad Lin Xiaotong's language was, she could understand what it meant when she put the words together. Almighty Qin had done this on purpose. From start to finish, it was all, "Didn't I say it just now? Thank you for your guidance, but..." Fu Jiu clenched her hands. "I also feel that I didn't do it well just now, and I should have done it a little slower." I wanted to do it like how Brother Mo taught someone a lesson during the live broadcast, but now it seems that making the opponent lose HP bit by bit is also a skill. I can't help it, compared to Brother Mo, my murderous aura is too strong. Hearing these words, Gui Gui and Lin Xiaotong felt nothing but hatred. Even Lin Feng rubbed the bridge of his nose. Did this brat not enjoy killing to his heart's content? Since he felt that he hadn't done it beautifully enough, Lin Feng didn't know what to say. Qin Mo looked into the youngster's eyes. As long as you don't use your murderous aura in real life, it doesn't matter how many you kill in the game. Fu Jiu smiled and didn't continue speaking. It seemed that in the future, even if he had some hidden thoughts, he would have to hide them better. However, she was a hacker and did not like to kill people. This time, the other party had touched her bottom line time and time again. She knew Shui Yao Yao very well. This girl had been enduring from the beginning. If it wasn't for something that she couldn't bear anymore, she wouldn't have exploded. Too many people only looked at things from the surface. Sometimes, even she was the same. But countless times, Fu Jiu saw He Honghua's shadow in Shui Yao Yao. They were strong and unyielding, loyal and upright. Why should he be despised just because he was poor and fat? Such an unfair situation almost destroyed He Honghua, a mother who loved her wholeheartedly and wholeheartedly. Fu Jiu wouldn't allow the same thing to happen to Yao Yao again. What's more, her people didn't need to endure at all. Seeing this, Liuli realized that she had made a huge mistake. She shouldn't have let her team members show their unfriendliness so inconspicuously. That man was smarter than anyone else. He must have noticed something. Liuli was anxious. The relationship that she had painstakingly built over the past year could not be destroyed just like that. Even if he had to brace himself, he had to leave one person alive when the two sides moved in the future. It's our team members who took it for granted. Liuli turned her head and said to Fu Jiu, young Master Fu is a well-deserved rookie king, and Miss Yao Yao is also very outstanding. I apologize for my team members' rashness. I look forward to your performance in the national competition. Fu Jiu nodded. Lin Xiaotong was still unconvinced, even more so than Gui Gui. However, after listening to her captain, she had no choice but to bury all the hatred in her heart. After all, she understood that falling out with Supreme Alliance wouldn't do them any good. However, Qin Mo didn't accept it. Rather than saying that he did not accept it, it would be more accurate to say that he did not care at all, because all his attention was on the youth beside him. Chapter 291. What are you looking at? The youngster's action of turning back was too obvious. Of course, Qin Mo's attention was distracted. Fu Jiu looked back. I feel like someone was looking at us just now. Your intuition is good. Qin Mo's voice was very calm, sounding like an ordinary elder brother praising his younger brother. Fu Jiu was of course happy to be praised, and she wanted to say her opinion. But the Almighty's next words were a trap. How did you cultivate such good intuition? Just from the simple school environment? You really can't let your guard down in front of the Almighty. Fu Jiu let out a long sigh and blinked her left eye. She looked very handsome. I learned it in school. The teachers in number 1 middle school liked to stick their necks in through the back door. Over time, my intuition got better too. Brother Mo, as a straight-A student, you won't be able to understand how a straight-A student like us has to be extremely vigilant before we dare to take out our phones when we want to send a WeChat message or read a novel in class. We must have good intuition to do this. Otherwise, not only will our phones be confiscated, but we will also be called to the teacher's office for a heart-to-heart talk. Qin Mo listened to the youngster's explanation and raised his eyes slightly. Fu Jiu knew that no matter what, this reason should have moved the Almighty a little. But the Almighty was always unexpectedly direct. It seems that you are very experienced. How many heart-to-heart talks did you come up with this conclusion? Fu Jiu, she seemed to have misunderstood something just now. The Almighty's mood didn't seem to improve. It's getting late. Qin Mo glanced at the clock hanging on the wall and said to the stupefied team members, "Go back to the hotel, there are new arrangements for tomorrow's schedule." "Yes, Captain." "Ah." Lin Feng and the others reacted half a beat slower. After all, the conversation between Captain and Little Spade felt weird. It seemed that only the two of them could understand it, and the others were all confused. And Captain really treated Little Spade differently. Since Qin Mo said that he was leaving, Lioli couldn't force him to stay. She forced a smile and wanted to send the Supreme Alliance out. But when Fujio walked to the machine at the door, suddenly, she felt something under her feet. If it weren't for Fujio's quick reflexes and good skills, she would have been lying on the ground. Qin Mo was walking in front of Fujio. When he heard the noise, he immediately stepped back and dragged the youngster to the left. Then, his cold eyes locked onto the culprit on the right. He was a Tokyo man with a handsome face. He wore headphones on his head, and his hair was blonde. His eye sockets were deep, and his eyes were dark. This phenomenon was caused by the frequent reversal of day and night. His outstretched leg was definitely not unintentional, because that posture was full of provocation. A team from China. The man spoke in Tokyo dialect. Not all the team members could understand what he was saying. But Qin Mo and Fujio knew. That person stood up and looked at Fujio. "You did a good job just now." "Oh, I forgot, you guys don't understand Japanese." "Boss, help me translate." "No need." Fujio's voice was indifferent. "I understand." Chapter 292. That kind of attitude carried a very obvious provocation. Even Lin Feng and the others, who didn't understand Tokyo dialect, could see that this person was not friendly, so they all gathered around. But the Cali team members exclaimed, That's Shuji." "Shuji?" Lin Feng also paused. "You mean he is the super rookie king of Sakura Stream Team, the one most likely to inherit their captain's glory?" Lioli's eyes were full of worry. "Yes, it's him. But it's strange, why is he here? The players of Sakura Stream Team should still be training at this time, and this person is very difficult to deal with. In this friendly match, Captain Yamaguchi of Sakura Stream Team didn't even play, and we only won one match in the duo competition. The other two matches, the individual competition and the team competition, were all suppressed because of this Shuji. Although Spade Z's hand speed is very fast, it is not enough to face such a strong opponent." Feng Shang, who was standing next to them, couldn't help but look in the direction of his idol when he heard this. Fujio's mouth was still half-hooked, and Qin Mo's expression was cold and noble. Seeing that these two people were not affected, Shuji smiled gloomily. "What? You don't dare to fight?" Fujio glanced at him, with one hand still in her trouser pocket, and her voice was very casual. "It's not that I don't dare, I'm not interested." The more indifferent the tone was, the more Shuji's eyes were full of evil. As the most promising rookie king in Tokyo, Shuji had never met such an interesting opponent. "Don't get me wrong," he said, interesting, not to praise, but the more he acted like this, the more sense of accomplishment he would feel when he broke his opponent. "It seems that the number one in Huaxia has its own pride, but Xiangnan is nothing compared to us." As Shuji said this, he stood up straight. "So, put away your arrogance, or do you mean that Huaxia people only know how to bark, but actually have no ability?" Hearing this, all the players in the training ground roared with laughter. Because in their minds, that was the image of Huaxia people. Speaking of the shortcomings of Huaxia people, there were simply too many. They were of poor quality, and when they traveled here, they would always make all kinds of jokes. Not to mention in esports, they were completely following their old ways. The members of the Supreme Alliance didn't know what they were laughing about. However, Luli knew that her face was extremely red. She just wanted to leave this place as soon as possible. After all, sometimes, even she felt that the people of Huaxia were too embarrassing. Especially those aunties, the things they did were simply laughable. Both Qin Mo and Fu Jiu knew this. But what he needed to worry about now wasn't the previous problem. But as Chinese, they were humiliated. Qin Mo came from the military compound. After hearing those words, he stopped, turned around, looked at Shuji, and said in a low voice, "Do you know what we call your behavior in Huaxia? You only know how to bicker." Shuji's face darkened. He squinted his eyes and was about to retort, but Fu Jiu interrupted him. "Two things. First, in our place, we only know how to quarrel, only bark." Fu Jiu stretched out a finger, following Qin Mo's words. Chapter 293. At that moment, Qin Mo and Fu Jiu, who stood side by side, seemed to have an unprecedented tacit understanding. There were no two people who could follow up the conversation so beautifully. All of a sudden, everyone in the training ground turned to look at them. "Are you kidding me? Shuji, who is coaching Sakura's dream team. They can't do it, right?" "Not necessarily. I saw one of their moves, and it was very handsome." One of them took off his headphones, turned his head, and leaned back, full of laziness. On that person's screen, there was still the game page of Hero, and the ranking he had just refreshed, second. Wearing a white shirt and a beige sweater, this person gave people a very gentle feeling, and even his face was very handsome. The training team member sitting next to that person saw his face, and he couldn't help but be shocked and wanted to say something. But that person put his finger in between his lips, smiled lightly, and made a shushing gesture. The training team member swallowed the two words Hoshino that were already at the tip of his tongue. That's right, the person hiding in the crowd was no one else. It was the vice-captain of the strongest team in Japan, Hoshino. He looked at the scene not far away and smiled faintly. This time, Shuji was going to suffer a setback. No one from Huaxia should underestimate them. He had a lot of Chinese friends, and most of them were in the Xiangnan team. Last year, when China and Japan were one-on-one. Although they won, it wasn't an easy win. Never look at the people of China the same way they used to be. Never look down on them. And even if they had to fight with good manners. Obviously, Shuji didn't understand that. Hoshino didn't want to watch anymore. After all, he knew everyone in the Xiangnan team, and this Chinese team was obviously not the Xiangnan team. However, he was very curious. Just what kind of team would be able to produce such an aura? Especially those two people. Hoshino's eyes rested on the backs of those two people, but he didn't see their faces. He said to himself, "I should have learned some Chinese characters." He didn't know if it was because he missed that person too much. As soon as he heard that there were Chinese in the training ground, he came over. Spade Z. Such a name would make him mistakenly think that he saw Z. But when he thought about it carefully, it was impossible. Z, if he really wanted to give a name, why would he add a spade in front? He was probably an admirer of Z. These days, there were many titles with Z in them. Only Z was irreplaceable. He knew Z very well. After working together on so many cases, someone as arrogant as her would not add any prefixes. As expected, he had thought too much. Hoshino stood up, and his eyes dimmed. He put his hands in his pockets and walked towards the other exit with Fu Jiu. He decided to give up on Huaxia and Dongying. Since he didn't have to participate in the competition, he would go back to Fifth Avenue to take a look. After all, that was Z's territory. He didn't believe what those people said. Z would disappear. As long as there was inequality in this world, Z would never disappear. Maybe it wasn't time yet. Wait until another case comes out. Z will appear. However, this was what he knew. Hoshino's judgment was completely wrong. If it was the Z of the past, she wouldn't have added a prefix in front of her name. Chapter 294. Except for the player sitting next to Hoshino, no one noticed his departure. Even Fujio herself didn't know that she had passed by her old friend. That player was still excited as he looked at Hoshino's back. He couldn't wait to tell everyone the news. In Japan, esports were treated with more respect than in China. In their eyes, playing games wasn't a waste of time. But sometimes, when there were more people, there would be more thoughts. How many people were self-righteous in life and ridiculed others without understanding them? It didn't matter about nationality or region, it was just that narrow-minded people would never realize their own narrow-mindedness. For example, Shuji right now, after listening to Fujio and Chin Mo's conversation, his face became more gloomy, and he even clenched his fists. "You want to teach me?" Shuji sneered and squinted at Fujio. "One-on-one, do you dare?" Fujio didn't say anything. She just raised her eyebrows at him with a lollipop in her mouth. If Hoshino saw Fujio like this, he would never leave so easily. The most important thing was that he decided to fly to America without seeing anything. Maybe this was the fate that people often talked about. However, the current situation was that Shuji wanted to kill the young man in front of him. He thought of a trick, and there was still viciousness in his eyes. "Then come with me. I'm tired of playing hero. Let's change to something new." "Don't go with him." That was Lioli's words. She wasn't thinking for Fujio, but if Fujio lost, Almighty Chin would lose face. Fujio glanced at Lioli and didn't reply to her. She pulled up her uniform and followed Shuji downstairs. Shuji wasn't alone. The two Sakura Stream players who were standing there also stood up after seeing this scene. The members of the three battle teams all went to the first floor. Popular arcade malls can be seen everywhere in China. But here in Tokyo, the scale was a little bigger. But it was these ordinary things that included all the esports events. King of Fighters, dance machines, drums, Tetris, and so on. "Don't say I'm bullying you." Shuji smiled. "Pick any one, and we'll compete." Feng Shang could understand Tokyo dialect. Hearing this, he couldn't help but say, This is clearly a difficult problem for us." People in Tokyo were familiar with these esports events. After all, they would come here to play from time to time. As Huaxia people, aside from playing games in internet cafes, they rarely went to Fun City. If this wasn't a difficult problem, what was it? "What? You said it so nicely just now, but now you're chickening out, saying that I'm giving you more trouble." Shuji had a cold smile on his face. "I just want you to know that you should just go and do your math problems. Esports is such a high-end thing, your brains can't handle it." You. Feng Shang clenched his fists angrily. But Fujio directly grabbed his wrist. Her dark eyes met Shuji's, and her aura didn't change a bit. "I'm fine with anything, why don't you choose?" "Interesting." Shuji's eyes shifted. "How about Starlight?" Chapter 295. I've never seen such a stupid Chinese. The other two members of Sakura Stream Squad said, "How dare they compete with Shuji in Starlight? Don't they know how terrifying Shuji's speed is? Those Kali Squad members have competed with us before, so they should know." Gue and Lin Xiaotong, who had competed with Sakura Stream Squad, did know. But they wouldn't stop this useless young master from jumping into the fire pit. Since Sakura Stream Squad was here, they could let Fujio know that there was always someone better than her. There weren't many people in China who played this kind of game equipment. People who hadn't touched this kind of equipment couldn't play well at all. They would be happy if Shuji could beat him to death. People like Gue and Lin Xiaotong had no national righteousness in their hearts. Selfish people would never understand. Why did Fujio stand up again after refusing the challenge? It was because the opponent's words insulted her motherland. Starlight was a game similar to Dazzle Dance or Rhythm Master. Quick keystrokes depended on hand speed and reaction. But it was different. After all, this was not a computer or a mobile phone, but a game equipment. Even if some people didn't understand Japanese, they understood what Fujio meant when they saw her standing in front of Starlight. Lin Feng couldn't help but curse, shameless, competing with what you're best at. Everyone in the world knew how familiar the Tokyo team was with these esports equipment. Little Spade would be at a disadvantage if they competed like this. Some people were worried, and some wanted Fujio to make a fool of herself. Only one person. He looked at the young man with his deep eyes. That kind of look was not just gentle. If you had seen a soldier, you would know what kind of look it was. Mysterious, firm, and very powerful. Like a towering Mount Tai, it exuded its unique charm. He stood where Fujio could see him if she turned around. This made Fujio smile faintly every time she looked back. Although the Almighty didn't believe her most of the time. He probably sensed something was wrong with her. After all, he was so smart. However, the strange thing was that at certain times, the Almighty always looked at her with this kind of reassuring look. Many times. It was like they were fighting side by side. This feeling was not bad. Fujio curled up her thin lips and placed her finger on the screen of Starlight. Shuji also raised his eyebrows and directly chose the most difficult song. After clicking into it, he chose the fastest song. When playing this game, everyone knew that their hands and eyes had to be fast, and they had to have a perfect sense of rhythm. Game start. Simple and crude. Whoever had the higher score would win. The members of Sakura Stream and Gue Gue almost thought that Fujio was going to lose. If it was any other song, Fujio might have been able to score it based on her reaction. But this song, there were many arrows, and there were quick flashes. The so-called quick dodge was when the arrow flashed by and you had to hit the rhythm of it. He might be able to react with a quick flash. But this song was played from all four directions at the same time. Fujio. Ha, shame on you. When Zhang Xiaotong saw this scene, she was filled with pleasure. She was waiting to see how this person would look when he was defeated. At the thought of this, she couldn't help but want to laugh. However, in the next second. Chapter 296. Clatter. When the key rang, 2 perfect characters appeared on the screen in a row. The more beautiful Fujio's fingers were, the more accurate the rhythm of her tapping was. Can't understand Flash. Are you kidding me? They thought she was faking it when she was playing games with lollipops in her mouth in the arcade city. Although she hadn't touched Starlight since her rebirth, but it didn't affect her original performance. After all, the Rhythm Master would come and play whenever he was free. But no matter how many words there were, they couldn't describe that magnificent operation. Arrows were flashing on the screen, and they were flickering. Even Coco, the cat-like teenager who claimed to play the most games, opened his mouth wide after seeing that speed. It was too fast. Not only was it fast, but it also made people dizzy. This gay who confessed to the captain, didn't he see it wrong? In just 1 second, the number of perfect characters had reached 60, and none of them were masters. This not only shocked the people of the Supreme Alliance, but also made the 2 members of Sakura Stream Squad directly widen their eyes. This. Motherf asterisk Kur. How could there be such a psycho? Shuji, come on. Don't stop, don't let him surpass you. Shuji could hear the sound on the other side, and when the sound of perfect broke 100 came to his ears. He squinted his eyes, and sweat gradually appeared on his forehead. It was an indescribable sense of oppression. He really couldn't understand why the young man, who looked harmless, would give off a feeling of suffocation the moment his fingers touched these electronic devices. Just as Shuji was thinking about this, the rhythm on the screen became faster, and the music score became more complicated. Shuji's fingers moved, and 2 of the arrows fell. Not only that, this song itself was very difficult. Shuji usually got 90 points at most. Don't underestimate a score of 90 points, which was the top 3 in all of Tokyo. The reason why he chose such a song was to make them lose miserably. But Shuji didn't expect that the opponent. Shuji's fingers suddenly froze while he was playing. That was because he had heard the loud sound of an explosion. In other words, the game wasn't over yet. His opponent had already broken the record he had set here. Shuji stiffened his neck and turned his head away. He didn't care about his screen anymore. He just stared blankly at the screen that hadn't been cut off. Perfect. But Fujio seemed to be completely immersed in it. Not only her right hand, but her left hand was also nimble and beautiful. Patter, patter, patter. Finally, with a bang, the game ended. The outcome of the battle was obvious. Fujio's score was more than 10 times that of Shuji. At that moment, Lin Xiaodong's expression was as ugly as it could be. Because she felt that Fujio had not only slapped Shuji's face, but also hers. Her cheeks were burning with pain, and she was filled with hatred and jealousy. At the side, the Supreme Alliance members were stunned. Lin Feng muttered, "Captain, how does Little Spade know how to play this?" Qin Mo's elegant and handsome side profile was very calm. As for why the youngster knew how to play, it was enough for him to know. There was no need to tell everyone. Lin Feng still felt that the guy walking towards them was a little too handsome. Especially when he smiled at the captain, even his white canine teeth were exposed, looking both youthful and evil. Chapter 297. However, Qin Mo, who was being teased, just raised his eyebrows indifferently. Then he took the jacket from Feng Shang's hand and threw it to the young man casually. "Good guidance. It's cold outside. Put it on and let's go back." Fujio was very happy to be praised again. She put on the jacket with the lollipop in her mouth, regardless of Shuji's expression behind her. "Xiangnan team, stop right there. We can't let the 2 players of Sakura Stream Team go like this. If what happened today gets out, their team's reputation will be damaged. We have to get back at them." Fujio tilted her head, smiled, and sneered slightly. "Who told you that we are from Xiangnan Team? It seems that Sakura Stream Team didn't collect enough information." Hearing this, Shuji suddenly came back from his failure. He squinted his eyes, and his pupils were shocked. Not from Xiangnan. How could it be? Before the match, he had been watching this person's hand move with the mouse. His fingers were skillful, and the most important thing was the young man's hand speed. Very fast and beautiful. After seeing the young man play Starlight, he wanted to play a real game of hero with this person more and more. He had to fight with him in a 1v1 ranking match. But in China, wasn't Xiangnan the best team? Who else could it be? Thinking of this, Shuji couldn't help but shout, "Which team are you from?" Fujio didn't look back, but raised her right hand and pointed behind her. Behind the flying jacket, there was only a pure black logo, which was like a dragon and a phoenix dancing in the middle. Shuji didn't know Chinese, and he didn't know what team it was, which made his face turn gloomy. After returning to Sakura Stream Team, he pulled a senior team member who knew how to be a man over, and he lowered his head and wrote 2 words there. Supreme Alliance. That senior smiled and said, "Isn't this the other team we are going to compete with?" "That's strange, why did you write their name?" Shuji didn't answer, but he looked down and scratched that piece of paper with his ballpoint pen. Then he laughed bloodthirstily. Supreme Alliance? The team that didn't even get into the top 3? He had to take revenge for this humiliation with his own hands. In fact, Shuji's skills in playing hero were much better than Starlight's. When he compared Starlight with Fujio, it meant that he looked down on Fujio. Unexpectedly, a horse would stumble. But it didn't matter. He would soon let them see what really sports was. On the other side, the Kali team had originally decided to stay in the same hotel as the Supreme Alliance. However, Secretary Liang suddenly told them that there was a change in the itinerary. Supreme Alliance would be training on their own. When Azure heard this news, she clenched her fists so hard that her fingers turned white. However, she had no choice but to smile and say, "Then we'll return to our country first. See you at the national competition." Secretary Liang nodded on behalf of Qin Mo and politely sent them out. In this way, Fujio felt much better. After all, she really couldn't stand people playing tricks under her nose. If the other party didn't leave now, she couldn't guarantee that she wouldn't hack into their computers. Feng Shang didn't think too much about it. There was only one thought in his mind, and that was that he could finally sleep with his idol and climb the ladder in his pajamas. At 9:00 in the evening, student Feng carefully put on his pajamas and lay on the bed waiting for his idol to come out of the bathroom. Chapter 298. Student Feng's entire person became alert. What was going on? What was wrong with the hotel in Tokyo? Why did they open the door without the guest's permission? Feng Shang was still complaining in his pajamas, but he didn't expect that when he looked back from the bathroom, he saw Almighty Qin walking towards him with one hand in his pocket, and the other hand was playing with the room card that he had gotten from who knew where. Feng Shang, he thought that with the good upbringing of the Qin family, shouldn't he knock on the door before entering the room? The sound of water in the bathroom was still ringing, and the steam was everywhere. Fujio didn't know what was going on here. Feng Shang's hands froze the moment Qin Mo came in. He behaved like a mole. Captain. It's so late, why did Almighty Qin come to their room? You did well today. Qin Mo's sudden compliment came in a calm voice. Feng Shang didn't understand. What did he do to make Almighty Qin think that he did well today? While student Feng was still confused, Qin Mo raised his hand and threw the room card into his hand. To reward you, you can have a private suite. Feng Shang looked at the room card in his hand, and his eyes widened. He finally mustered up the courage to refute, I don't want a reward. He just wanted to sleep with his idol quietly, but Almighty Qin didn't allow it. Was this a reward? Oh. Qin Mo curled up the corner of his lips, and his side profile was perfect and cold. Second young master, I don't think I'm asking for your opinion. I'm just informing you whether you want to go out by yourself or let someone escort you out. Every time Feng Shang heard Almighty Qin call him second young master, his back would stiffen, and it was even worse this time. It wasn't that he didn't want to sleep with his idol, but because Almighty Qin was too oppressive. In the end, baby Feng couldn't resist that cold aura. He silently picked up his clothes and walked towards the door, looking back 3 times with each step. The world was so unfair. Why did he have to use his strength to oppress others? There were 2 bodyguards in black standing at the door. Almighty Qin was obviously threatening him. Baby Feng was really sad. He had been looking forward to climbing the stairs in his pajamas all day, and now it was gone. As Qin Mo himself, he didn't feel any guilt. After getting rid of the extra people in the room, Qin Mo took the laptop and data cable from the bodyguard's hands and asked them to leave. The bodyguard looked at the pitiful student Feng in the hallway, and then looked at Boss Qin's handsome face. They didn't talk about the boss. However, wasn't Boss Qin being too shameless? The main reason Boss Qin came up with was the reward. Was it really appropriate to use it here? Poor second young master Feng. If it were anyone else, they wouldn't be able to withstand Chairman Qin's devastation. The night gradually darkened. In the bathroom, Fujio turned off the shower. After wrapping the new bandages around her body a few times, she put on a tank top, a pure white sweater, and a pair of coffee-colored trousers. She was dressed in a very Korean style. Her silver fringe was still dripping water, her nose was high, and her thin lips were smiling. Her skin was so white that it seemed like water was overflowing. She walked out just like that. Originally, she wanted to ask baby Feng to draw a towel for her, but when she raised her head, her fingers froze. Chapter 299. At this moment, his deep eyes were looking at her, and there was a bit of laziness in his gaze. That gaze seemed to be able to anesthetize people. If Qin Mo's fans came in at this time, they would probably be knocked down by this god before they could even open their mouths. Handsome and dangerous. Fujio raised the corner of her mouth. Brother Mo, it's so late. Why are you here? Where's baby Feng? Qin Mo glanced at his handsome face, which was flushed from the shower. He averted his eyes and said faintly, I'm here to guide you on your gaming skills. Fujio. So, where did baby Feng go? Wait, she had a very bad feeling about this. Brother Mo, until what time are you going to guide me? Fujio pushed her hair back and narrowed her eyes slightly. The water finally stopped dripping, but this action made her look even more eye-catching. The bright light shone down and outlined a faint halo on the youngster's side. It was so clean that one could see the fine hairs on it. Qin Mo looked back, and his deep eyes seemed to be soaked with alcohol. Before going to bed. After saying that, he added in a very faint voice, I'll stay with you tonight. Hearing that, Fujio wanted to say something, but she saw that the man was looking at her calmly, as if he wanted to see what kind of expression she would give him. The Almighty was such a dangerous person. She knew it better than anyone. Sometimes, the more you tried to hide, the more flaws there would be. Fujio curled her lips into a light smile. Then I'll have to trouble you, Brother Mo. Qin Mo raised his eyebrows and directly handed the business notebook in his hand to the youngster whose words and actions didn't match his heart. Looking at his puffed-up cheeks, he couldn't help but raise the corner of his mouth into a smile. Fujio was confused. Brother Mo, you seem to be in a good mood. Yeah. Qin Mo didn't deny it. Fujio was interested. What's so happy about? Tell me about it. Otherwise, if the atmosphere in the room was too single, it would be easy to cause problems. Qin Mo glanced at the youngster and said casually, for example, seeing you depressed. Fujio turned her head decisively. She didn't speak, because talking would achieve the Almighty's goal. She wouldn't be depressed, because being depressed would achieve the Almighty's goal. She wanted to play games in a bright and sunny manner. It was indeed very bright and sunny. He quickly KO'd a player the moment he appeared. The player was really confused and sent a message, Bro, why are you so murderous? Can't we play friendly? The Almighty never played friendly with her. He didn't reply and continued to kill. Fujio crossed her long legs and sat next to Qin Mo. The single beds in the hotel were usually very big, and two people could sit on the left and right side of the bed. The smile on Qin Mo's face deepened when he saw the youngster's speed. If Secretary Liang were here, he would definitely break down. Young Master Zhou didn't even do anything. He just killed people a little faster. Why was Boss Qin smiling so happily? When it was about the fourth person, Almighty Qin finally put on his game coaching stance. He reached out his right hand and directly covered Fujio's hand that was holding the mouse. His thin lips carried a pleasant, light scent of tobacco. Here, pull back a little bit. When we play the team competition, we can prevent a sneak attack from behind. Chapter 300. It had to be said that Qin Mo's experience and skills could indeed make up for some of Fujio's shortcomings in a short time. At this moment, Fujio realized that no matter how fast her hand's speed was, because Spade Z's level wasn't high enough, there would still be some obstacles. In fact, this was something that every team knew very well. Even if they admitted that Spade Z was very good. But they wouldn't think that they would lose to Spade Z in a match. They were professional teams, so compared to the newbies in the selection contest, the National League was not that easy to get into. Chin Mo had discovered this problem from the very beginning, so he agreed to play dungeons with Fujio at that time. Apart from liking Fujio, another reason was that she could level up quickly by playing dungeons. Of course, playing in ranked matches was the same. In fact, battle results were very helpful for leveling up. But with this, they still couldn't compete with the Xiangnan team. Noticing that Chin Mo had stopped, Fujio tilted her head with a puzzled look in her eyes. When the soft silver hair dried, it would become fluffy. Chin Mo saw that the young man was looking at him like this, and his eyes became dull again. It was nothing, until they met the Xiangnan team. There were still 7 matches left. Enough for his brother to practice. He was in charge of winning. If other teams knew Chin Mo's thoughts, they would all vomit blood. Did they look like punching bags? Practice? Chin Mo doted on his brother to a certain extent. This had something to do with the Chin family's upbringing. There was no other reason. As long as it was his people, he had to protect them. Sleepy? Chin Mo asked the young man. A man's voice was deep and pleasant, especially in the dark night. Fujio shook her head. She moved the mouse and gestured a 7 to Chin Mo. That meant she could play 7 more matches. Looking at such a hard-working young man, Chin Mo's eyes changed a lot. In fact, his brother didn't need to work so hard. But before he could speak, the phone beside him rang. Fujio thought it was business, so she raised her eyebrows and signaled him to answer. But Chin Mo knew very well that the song, Castle in the Sky, was specially made for someone. He stood up, took the phone, and said in a calm voice, "Hello. You took so long to answer my call. Are you in a meeting again?" The woman on the phone was very beautiful. Not only was she beautiful, but she also had an indescribable mature elegance. Anyone who saw her could not help but admire her temperament. She was indeed a popular movie queen. Even at this age, the beauty that she exuded was almost intoxicating. However, her elegance had been replaced by a small complaint, as if she was a little childish. "Did you know? Your Auntie Wang already has a grandson." Chin Mo tilted his head and lit a cigarette. "I know. You only know 2 words. Who did you pick up from?" Alas. The beauty was really helpless. She let out a long sigh and said, "I also want to hold a grandson." Chin Mo arched a brow. "You can get your Mr. Chin to steal one for you. Isn't he with you?" "Yes." The beauty's eyes lit up. "Do you want to talk to your dad? About that online girlfriend of yours?" Chin Mo's voice was calm. "Online girlfriend?" Chapter 301. But it didn't matter if it exploded. Since it was out. She didn't need to beat around the bush. "Son, our Chin family is not so conservative. You like to play games so much now, it's not strange that you know someone online. What does she look like? How old is she? Which family is she from? It doesn't matter if she's not in our circle, as long as you like her. When are you going to bring her home? Your dad and I can fly back anytime." The beauty said and pulled the man who was reading a business magazine beside her. "Right?" The man was in a military uniform and looked noble. "Yes, I'm free." The adjutant who was waiting behind the man was speechless. Chin Mo was still holding his phone. He looked at the youngster who was playing games on the bed and became indifferent. "I don't have a girlfriend." "How is that possible, son? Don't lie to me." The beauty narrowed her eyes. Even though I'm not as smart as you and your dad, I still have the basic IQ. As far as I know, you've been playing games during meetings, which isn't your usual style. Also, you've been sending voice messages to people on WeChat and even waiting for them to call you. You're clearly in a relationship, and it's something that only a young man would do. After all, you've never had a girlfriend before, so you might not know about it. You can talk to me about this, and I can provide you with ways to pursue whoever you want, right? So, just admit it. Chin Mo took a drag of his cigarette and said lazily, "Beautiful missin, as far as you know, will Secretary Liang call you from time to time when he is with me?" The beauty was a little guilty. She lowered her voice and said to the man beside her, "What should I do?" "My son found out. It's natural for parents to look after their children." Chin Mo heard his father's answer and raised his eyebrows. The beauty heard her husband's words and immediately became confident. "Son, you are deliberately changing the topic. What does that mean?" "It means that you are guilty. I did meet someone on the internet." Chin Mo knew that there would be no end to this conversation, so he just admitted it. "But, he is a man." "A man?" After the beauty heard this answer, disappointment flashed across her face. "Son, you're not lying to me, are you?" Chin Mo walked back, his left hand in his trouser pocket, his right hand holding onto his phone. He leaned against the headboard casually, lowering his lids to look at the youngster's furry head. "You can ask your spy, Liang." Hearing this, the beauty knew that it was hopeless. How could it be a man? "However, son, have you been sleeping well recently?" In fact, this was what the beauty was concerned about. Chin Mo's fingers paused, and he glanced at Fujio again. "Not bad, there's someone to sleep with now." "Sleep with me?" The beauty was really surprised when she heard this. She didn't know what she was going to ask. Chin Mo said, "That's it, I'm hanging up." The beauty was speechless. Why was her son like this? But, what kind of person could make his son let down his guard? Once this matter was over, she had to meet him. Ever since that case, her son had changed. Even if nothing could be seen on the surface. But as a mother, how could she not understand her son? You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.